Hello and welcome to Six Part. Today I'm going to start a new series, What If Deku Had the Monster Transformation Quirk. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Choking on repulsive sludge, he was dying. His arms were manipulated and made to dart in any direction the antagonist requested. His lungs burned for the second time in his life, but it wasn't the smoke from that evening. It was thick, cloying, and caustic. He was going to pass away. He would never find his Aniki and would never see his parents again. Then he heard that roar, though. Katsuki wanted to cry as his heart leapt. Even though it had been more than a decade, it was back to save him once more. Katsuki experienced a surge of renewed strength and made one final attempt to break free. He was Katsuki Bakugo, and he still had to find his hero. The crowd outside was terrified when they heard the roar as well. A pair of glowing green orbs approached with heavy-clawed steps in the shadows of an alley. Its actual size and bulk were revealed as lines started to glow as it got closer. Even as hints of purple and green started to seep from its body, it strode forward with all the grace of a big cat. It was enormous. With purple fur, green accents, and gold ridges of sharp bone, it stands 4 meters, approximately 13 feet, tall and measures 13.5 meters, approximately 44 feet, in length. It ignored the bystanders, and when a hero attempted to move to block him, the beast let out a rumbling growl that caused their body to freeze in instinctive fear and their heart to lurch. Until the villain jerked Katsuki's hand in its direction and unleashed the largest blast yet, the big beast kept strutting forward, its eyes fixed on the villain and its hostage. However, without losing a step or displaying any damage, the beast proceeded to approach from the smoke. When it was only a few feet away, the beast leapt, leaving a trail of wisps behind it. A blade on its forearms then sliced through the slime villain, leading several people to believe that the boy inside had also been slashed. The villain lay unconscious in pools on the ground as the miasma exploded in a flash and blast of concussive fire, while the wisps extinguished every other fire nearby. As everyone turned to face the beast, they saw the teen hostage sitting between its forelimbs, protecting him by nuzzling him in obvious concern. Then, as more wisps escaped its body, the beast started to shrink and burn away, and eventually a teen with green curly hair replaced it. The blonde sobbed as he clung to the slightly older and taller adolescent in the quiet that followed. Then they heard him screaming, "It was you. I should have known. I knew you wouldn't just abandon me, Aniki, so where did you go? Please Izu-ni, where have you been all these years?" Izuku didn't say anything. "I'm sorry Kachin. I had to run. Things were complicated. My quirk, it isn't the easiest to control, but I'm back now, little brother, and I'll do everything I can to stay." Then, avoiding the golden bone ridges that persisted even in the teen's deformed appearance, one of the heroes, a big man known as Death Arms, tore the two apart and pinned Izuku beneath his knee. Izuku did not resist when the obviously furious hero read his rights and placed him in quirk-suppressing handcuffs. Rather, he gave Katsuki a comforting smile while another hero pulled him away to an ambulance so that he could receive medical attention. Izuku's gaze was unmistakable, so he didn't fight back either. Katsuki reached out and almost lost his temper at being ripped away. One thing was certain. Their separation was only temporary, and they would soon find a way to get back together. The two were loaded into two very different cars that were going to two very different places. Katsuki woke up in his room the next thing he knew. Once more, he was free. Above all, he recognized the flames, but he also recognized the heat, smoke, and burning sensation in his lungs. As usual, they were orange and red, but occasionally there would be a flash of black. He recalled this evening. His parents had asked the elderly woman next door to watch over the house that night because they had to abruptly leave for a meeting with a lawyer. Additionally, that house had burned down that night, almost taking him with it. Katsuki recalled coughing frantically as she fell to the ground, followed by a roar and shattering glass. A tiger-sized, purple-furred creature broke through his door and pulled him to safety by the collar of his All Might pajamas. After that, it simply vanished. Shortly after, the elderly woman located him and held him until the police, firefighters, and pro-heroes showed up. On that day, his uncle ran, his aunt passed away, and his big brother, best friend, and hero vanished into thin air. After what would become known as the slime incident, Katsuki woke up from his nightmare in the hospital and started crying once more. In joy, not in shame, fear, or loneliness. This time, the nightmare was truly over. Now that Izuku was back, Katsuki could finally get his answers, as soon as he managed to get away and head to the police station. Izuku was comfortably seated in an interrogation room at the aforementioned police station. The suppression cuffs are still in place, but they are totally disregarded. He was sitting slightly forward so that the ridges on his back weren't against the chair, and his gold arm blades were still there, relaxed along his forearm. Izuku let his long green hair fall down his back, trying not to fidget or show any signs of resistance, because he reasoned that damaging police property would not be a good place to start negotiations. Only 2 demands had he made. He wanted to know when Katsuki was deemed safe and unharmed after the incident, and after that, he wanted to have a face-to-face conversation with Katsuki's mother, Mitsuki. Izuku was willing to wait in silence until his demands were satisfied. It took the remainder of the day, but when it was late and past the hospital's visiting hours, Mitsuki showed up, shocking the police who hadn't even gotten in touch. Their plan was to let the teenager perspire for a few more hours. It appeared that the universe had decided to make fun of his demands, even though that was not their intention. Mitsuki was led into the interrogation room by a detective wearing a duster and a fedora, who began to explain that he was required to remain in accordance with protocol but was never given the opportunity. "It's really you. I had given up hope of ever seeing you again," Mitsuki exclaimed as she embraced Izuku, instantly forgetting all the rules and cautions. With tears in her eyes, Izuku said, "I missed you too, Mitsi." "She told you?" Mitsuki asked, pulling away and staring at him in disbelief. "Yeah, she told me. We were going to surprise you that night, but he found out, and..." Izuku nodded. Mitsuki pulled his head to her chest like a child as Izuku began to cry. Mitsuki froze as Izuku sniffed. "You were the last person on her mind before she passed. Mom, her last breath, her final request, was that I protect you, you and Kachin, and I tried, but that's when my quirk awoke, and I got lost. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom." Mitsuki simply shushed him and stroked his curls, being cautious not to touch the sharp horns that now protruded from his head like antlers. The 2 embracing figures stiffened as if a bucket of cold water had been thrown on them, and then separated as the detective cleared his throat and said, "I hate to interrupt, but we've met your demands. Now we expect answers." Mitsuki went to the chair across from Izuku, where the detective would have sat, and moved it to sit next to Izuku. "Let's start with the basics. Who are you, on the record?" The detective sighed. To start the recording, the detective took a remote control out of his pocket and sat down. Izuku stopped and said, "My name is Izuku Midoriya. I'm 16, and this record is being made with my full compliance and of my own will." With a startled blink, the detective said, "Detective Naomasa Tsukauchi, present and performing this session of questioning. You may begin, Midoriya-san." Izuku grumbled, "Detective, please call me Izuku. I stopped being a Midoriya a long time ago, and in the interest of transparency, I will do my best to answer any and all questions you have, but there are things I know I must remain silent on. I do not do so lightly, but should a few facts come to light at this time it could endanger the lives of people I care for very much. I hope you understand that said situations are delicate, and as soon as they become less so, you will be the first person I reach out to for official intervention." Blinking. "True. In the interest of shared transparency, I will make you aware of my quirk, lie detector. It allows me to determine whether or not your statements are factual and verify them for the record." Izuku grinned. "A powerful and inconvenient quirk to have, sir. I hope you can turn it on and off, otherwise just being in public must be a hassle for you." "I cannot, and it is, but that is not the point of this interview," Tsukauchi sighed. Mitsuki took notice, but Izuku shook his head to indicate that he wasn't interested at that moment. Izuku laughed and said, "Sorry. My little siblings always say I am a bit of a quirk nerd. Speaking of quirks, I call mine Barbarous Beast, and yes, it's a monster quirk." Mitsuki inhaled sharply and said, "Oh no, Izu." Tsukauchi raised his hand. "The record will observe, Mitsuki Bakugo is also present for this interview at the request of the interviewee. Now, Izuku, what makes you so sure that your quirk fits that classification? Not all transformative beast quirks are within that category. I am surprised you are even aware of said category." Izuku chuckled, "I am aware. As stated, I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to quirks. For ease, I'll break it down. A monster quirk is one that falls between heteromorphic and transformative, with qualities of both. In my current form, I still maintain my beastly senses, and the natural weapons of my beast form, including my arm blades, claws, fangs, and hellfire. Hellfire, blinked Tsukauchi. Izuku grinned. The purple and green wisps my body can release. They are naturally explosive and fire-like, but only burn or explode at my will. I am told they can be rather uncomfortable to be covered in when I have no intention of harm, but that is all. They are completely safe if I wish them to be. Back to the classification. I have the ability to become the large beast that was observed before my containment. I didn't used to be in control when I entered that form, but now I am without exception. Though it did take a lot longer than I'd like in order to gain said control, and the training required was rigorous. The main defining characteristic of monster quirks is what I would call the hunter or herd instinct. With a head tilt, Tsukauchi said, "Please explain." Izuku exhaled. Heteromorphic quirks often come with animal instincts. Monster quirks take that principle and take it a step further. Monsters seek each other out, even if we do not intend to or do so consciously. When found, there are only two ways the situation can go. Either we fight, resulting in the winner becoming dominant over the loser, should they survive, or they become part of each other's herd. Neither are necessarily permanent. After all, monsters are still beasts, and thus challenges for dominance can be had as often as is felt needed, and herds can break apart in the situation where one or more members needs to. My earlier statement about things I can't speak on has to do with my own herd, and I, like most monsters, will die before betraying their trust. Tsukauchi exhaled. Noted, and true. Let's move on to a different matter. According to our records, you disappeared 12 years ago along with your father. Izuku barked. Hisashi Midoriya is not my father. He may be my male donor, but no familial connection remains between us. I'm happy he's dead. Both adults were taken aback by the statement's coldness, and Mitsuki stammered, he's dead. How do you know? Izuku breathed a sigh of relief, because I killed him the night he murdered my mother. Tsukauchi stopped and continued. He found out some inconvenient facts while heavily inebriated, his normal state outside of work hours. He took them poorly, and as a result he attacked her, left her burnt and dying. The stress of which caused my quirk to awaken. I was lost, fully consumed by the monster I became, and I hunted him all the way to the Bakugo's home. Tsukauchi raised his hand. For clarity, you're saying Hisashi Midoriya murdered his wife Inko Midoriya in a drunken rage before going to attack another family that from all reports were dear family friends. It rings true, but I must admit, I don't follow the logic. Izuku whimpered, and Mitsuki sighed. There are aspects that we kept off the record. Inko and I had been friends for most of our lives, that much is true. The other aspect of our relationship was not as well known. After Inko got married and had Izuku, Hisashi started getting violent. He would drink, and then he'd beat her, sometimes worse. On the upside, his work made him travel from time to time, so occasionally they would get a week or two without the bastard. It was during one of those periods, about 2 years before her death, that I found her covered in burns and bruises, and she broke down. She told me what was going on, and we started to plan their escape. Tsukauchi replied, so you were going to help her exit her marriage safely. That does make some sense. Tsukauchi moaned loudly as Mitsuki blushed and scratched her cheek, saying, yeah. It got a bit complicated. You see, we weren't always just best friends. During high school we might have fooled around a bit, and ... Okay, in the process of trying to get them out, we might have started a small affair. My husband became aware quite quickly, and bless his heart, he wasn't angry. He admitted to knowing that it was inevitable between us, and he was willing to share. The night of the fire, we were talking with our lawyer to finalize paperwork to add Inko to our marriage contract in the coming weeks. We were going to adopt Izuku as well. That way we could be one big family. Izuku snuggled up to Mitsuki's shoulder. We had a plan. Serve Hisashi the papers after getting Inko and Izuku safely hidden in a safe house set up by our attorney, and use his abuse as evidence to have their marriage voided for both her safety and Izuku's. Then he asked, do you still have all the pertinent paperwork, including the signed documents verified by a medical professional? Mitsuki replied, we do. I'll have them forwarded to your office in the morning from our attorney's office. Izuku said, I knew about the plan. I had to watch the abuse on multiple instances, and I caught them once, while Hisashi was away. You did, blushed Mitsuki. Izuku responded with a grin, about a week before she died. Mom was mortified, but I knew you made her happy, happier than anyone else could, so I accepted it. That's how he found out. I was 4, I didn't know any better. He found a bag I had packed. I lied, but he got suspicious. It's my fault. My mother is dead, and it's my fault. When Mitsuki gave Izuku another hug, Tsukauchi grinned and said, false. Izuku gave him a startled look. Izuku, as you stated, you were a child. Not only does that make you immune to legal responsibility, but also any responsibility at all. There was nothing you could do, and that's a fact. Tsukauchi took a moment to gather his thoughts. So, jealous abusive husband finds out his wife is cheating and intending to leave. Attacks her, and then goes after her partner. I can see the links now, but why burn down their home? Izuku sighed. He said that they destroyed his life, so it was only fair he destroy theirs, but I understand that's hearsay since he's dead and I'm the only witness, and an unreliable one at that, given the circumstances. I remember everything, even though I wasn't really in control by that point. Hisashi was like me, a monster. He hid it saying that his quirk was only fire breath, but he was a dragon. It's one of the reasons I felt pressured to kill him. He killed my mother, hurt my herd, and that triggered something deep inside my beast brain. I followed him, hunted him, but then I heard Kachin, Katsuki Bakugo, in danger and my priorities shifted. I had to protect him. I made Mom a promise I would, but once he was safe, that pull returned. My family would never be safe as long as Hisashi drew breath, so I made sure he didn't. It wasn't easy, and I only really survived because he was that drunk and disoriented after using his full quirk for the first time in years. I caught him pre-shift, and ripped out his throat. Tsukauchi exhaled. True, but what about after that? Why not go home or seek out Bakugo-san? She clearly cares for you, and would have understood. Izuku nodded. That's what you can't understand. I wasn't me, not at that point. I wasn't human, again, until a year later, and by then I was far away. I was snapped up by hunters and shipped overseas as a exotic pet. It took years before I managed to return to Japan, and by then, I couldn't just come back. I wasn't safe. Not until I had full control. Tsukauchi sighed. I'm guessing you won't tell us what you've been up to since your return. Izuku continued to focus on him despite Mitsuki's attempts to console him. Shaking his head, Izuku said, I'm sorry, but I can't, not yet. In that case, I have one last question. Are you the vigilante, Malice? Tsukauchi moaned. Izuku laughed. I would have thought that was obvious. Yes, detective, I am. He massaged his temples. I'm sorry Izuku, you are under arrest for 12 counts of assault on a hero, 28 counts of arson, and 56 confirmed counts of vigilantism. You have a right to remain silent. The hell you will. My son is a goddamn good man and I, exclaimed Mitsuki as she leapt to her feet. Calm down, Mom, I'll be fine, I promise. Just keep Katsuki safe and calm. I know he won't like this, but we can't fight this way. Don't let yourself get angry, and focus on what you can do, okay? Izuku smiled and squeezed her hand. You truly are my Coco's boy. Don't worry, I'll find a way to help you, I promise. You're my son too, and I won't let anyone take you away from me again, Mitsuki said, taking a deep breath and planting a kiss on Izuku's forehead. Each of the three then went off on their own. Mitsuki went to speak with her lawyer about a few matters, Tsukauchi went to his office to relax and prepare his report, and Izuku was put in a holding cell. However, his spouse was seated on his couch when he entered. Despite his worried expression, the man silently extended a hand to Tsukauchi. After a short while, the blinds were drawn and the door was locked. This whole thing is a mess. I've got a lost child, now a vigilante, sitting peacefully downstairs, and everything about him makes me want to slap him upside the head before letting him go. I caught Malice, but I can't even enjoy it. You saw him in action. What's your assessment? Tsukauchi sighed after sitting in his husband's lap and allowing himself to relax and melt a little. The brunette grinned. He is raw and unpolished, but incredibly skilled. I checked the crime scene, Masa, he left no damage of his own. His flames snuffed the fires and I know for a fact no creature the size of a double-decker bus should be able to move without leaving evidence, but he did. No claw marks, no disturbed trash in the alley, not even a bit of fur, he came and went like a ghost. That shows real potential. Then there's his crimes. I know as well as you do that most of those heroes he fought were dirty. The fire's set to protect others. This teen has a heroic heart, but I can't say for sure yet if it's been corrupted into something shadowed by a loss of empathy. Most vigilantes are heroic at their core, but have lost themselves to pain and trauma. I only hope this boy has not as well. After a pause, the detective opened his eye and said, there's only so much I can do for him, sadly, but maybe you could. Tsukauchi cuddled closer, saying, me too Toshi. Me too. After giving it some thought, the skeletal-looking blonde said, perhaps, but that might end up being worse than Tartarus. Once I open this door, it's open, and there's no knowing what kind of chaos will come of it. Tsukauchi laughed. I'm not worried. Like you said, that kid has a heroic heart, and I have you. I'm never afraid because I have the number one in my corner. Rolling his eyes, Toshinori said, my time as a hero is reaching its end. Leaning over and planting a kiss on the skeleton's cheek, Tsukauchi said, but you're only just beginning your reign as number one husband. After a few minutes of cuddling, Tsukauchi slipped out of his husband's arms and headed back to his desk to resume his work. If you're sure this is what you want, I'll make the call. Honestly, he's probably just waiting for an excuse to get involved anyway. Tsukauchi nodded, and they began working in the cozy silence they had grown accustomed to, collaborating to accomplish what neither could do alone. Toshinori walked him with a slight smile. Izuku was moved to the Musudafu prison during the course of the following week, with a suppression collar now fastened to his throat. Because of his age and peculiarities, he was kept apart, but that didn't mean he was by himself. A bear that was a little bigger than normal was in a different cage, across from him. She stood about 14 feet tall, weighed perhaps 2.5 tons, and had ridges and spikes all over her forearms and upper back. She roared, raged, and thrashed about when he was first brought in, but Izuku didn't react until he heard someone crying in the dark. He would purr, growl, and zing, to soothe her in the middle of the night when no one else was around, and gradually the sobbing stopped. Izuku worked on his own while the lawyers argued and Katsuki vented his frustration at not being able to visit his brother with training. When the guards arrived to pick Izuku up for his trial after 6 months, the bear had vanished. That's when I saw that annoying 8-point buck again, and, AZ, I think it's time. I want you to keep up your meditation at least once a day, and remember, you and the monster are not different creatures. You are one whole. Its rage is your rage. Its joy is your joy. It is your power, but your mind is the one to guide it. Don't fight what we are, work with it. You are not its master, and it is not yours. You are partners, equals, and two parts of a beautiful whole. Understand? Okay, Aniki. I will. I'm going to miss you, AZ, said in a quiet voice, followed by a few sniffles the guards heard. Don't worry little sugar bear, Aniki will find a way to help you. I just need you to continue being the big strong girl you are, Izuku said with a little comforting purr. The girl gave a slight nod in return, but when she heard the guards getting closer, she let out a menacing growl and ran back against the wall across from her with a terrified cry. Izuku let the guards lead him away, but as soon as they were out of earshot of the girl, Izuku growled lowly, if I find out you've hurt or mistreated her in any way. His voice became even more monstrous and deep, I will make you pray for death and leave you wanting as you rot away, a prisoner of your own bodies. He walked on, smelling the guard's genuine fear mixed with a hint of grateful sadness. Izuku was satisfied that AZ knew she wouldn't be left behind. The trial took a long time and was very taxing. It was made more difficult by Izuku's refusal to talk about anything that would put his herd in danger, but Izuku's lawyer, who had previously offered to help save him and his mother, took advantage of this. Izuku was portrayed by him as an underground hero, too young to get a license and too devoted to his family to jeopardize their security. Izuku maintained his composure despite the prosecution's attempts to paint him as a monstrous villain and throw every crime back in his face. He gave an explanation for his actions, and in each case, it was discovered that he was rescuing people from potentially fatal circumstances. He never disputed the claims that he was a monster or that he was a vigilante, but he wasn't a villain and was willing to be held accountable for his legal transgressions. According to him, it was a fair trade, as long as those individuals were safe. The jury had returned a verdict following 2 months of testimony, followed by another month of deliberation and debate. The judge was uncomfortable in her chair while preparing to speak to the jury. This case has proven a mess, in this judge's opinion. What at first appeared to be a simple case of juvenile rebellion and vigilantism quickly grew into a tangled web that no doubt will spark an internal review of how heroes and the heroic system is processed, but that is not the responsibility of this court. We are here to decide the fate of one, Izuku Bakugo, aka Malice aka Izuku Midoriya. She continued with a sigh, I have to commend you, Bakugo-san, you caused quite the schism among the jury for a time, but they have reached a verdict with an addendum. You were found guilty of all charges. The observers gasped, but the judge continued, normally this would land you in Tartarus for the foreseeable future, but the jury has recommended leniency. In fact, they have requested that this court punish you as lightly as is legal in light of the lives you saved and your earnest acceptance of accountability. I am of the mind to agree, but this court finds it difficult to render an adequate punishment. Perhaps I can be of service, Your Honor. I have followed this case through my own channels, like the rest of the country, and I believe I have a solution. I will take possession of the boy. This court can call it a deferred sentence. Give me 3 years to mold this young hero into a stellar example of heroic excellence. If he fails, or slips back into vigilante tendencies, he will be remanded to Tartarus like any other reprobate of his caliber, but if he succeeds, his record will be sealed and no further discussion will need to be had about it. Perhaps I can be of service, Your Honor, she said, sporting a dapper suit, orange shoes, and a scarred right eye. The judge thought about this for a while and let breath out. The specifics will need to be ironed out by others, but I find no reason to counter your suggestion, Principal Nezu. In light of that, this court declares the accused is to be remanded to UA custody, where he will rise or fail by his own merits. The court wishes you luck, but with that, court is adjourned. This isn't over, Aniki. The entrance exam is only a month away. I will get into UA too. We'll be together again soon. I promise, Katsuki said as he leapt the railing dividing them and gave his older brother a tight hug before he could be stopped. Izuku laughed and reciprocated with a smirk. Never a doubt in my mind, Kachin. I know you can, and you will, because nobody else is as explosively talented as you are. I need you to let go now, and keep training hard. I have years of lost time to make up for, so just you wait. I haven't forgotten your promise to be my sidekick. Katsuki laughed. That was before my quirk came in. Don't be surprised if you end up my sidekick, you big pussy. As they parted ways, Izuku laughed and said, don't get too ahead of yourself, little man. I'm still the alpha around here, and you haven't seen anything yet. After giving each other a fist bump, Katsuki leapt back to his seat while the bailiff and security personnel glared at them but paid them no attention. A few hours later, Izuku's trip to UA was dull. The prison insisted on a complete 5-point containment even though there was never the slightest indication of unwarranted aggression. Izuku was thus restrained and chained on the floor of a reinforced transport vehicle, with his legs chained to the floor, his neck to the ceiling, his arms to the opposing walls, and his core to the wall that separated the driver and passengers. Izuku couldn't help but roll his eyes at the mess created by Quirk-reinforced steel chains. None of this would stop him if he wanted to get away, but since he wouldn't demonstrate his skills to these idiots, they couldn't find out. At the UA gates, Nezu and a fairly attractive woman wearing a business suit and red-rimmed glasses greeted them and glared at the transport team in frustration and disappointment. The woman grinned and clipped something to the suppression collar after Nezu insisted that everything else be taken off. Izuku growled a little when he realized it was just a plain black leash. The woman bit her lip and said, now come along. We have a lot to do, and Auntie Midnight is so looking forward to obedience training. The transport team shivered as the woman licked her lips and said, don't be like that, my pet. Do you know how many men and women would sell everything they own to be on my leash? I'm so sorry about the theater, kiddo, but you of all people must understand the need to play the role when in public. The woman jerked around and took off the leash after the team had left. You can call me Kayama-san, or Nimori if you like. Don't worry, Nezu and the rest of the staff have your back, I promise. Izuku raised his eyebrows. I hope you understand if I'm skeptical. I have seen a lot of people who extended a helping hand with one hand and clutched a knife in the other. A healthy perspective for someone like us. Nezu nodded. Izuku took a deep breath. You are not like me and mine, sir. I can't say what you are in fact, but you are not monster-kin. Nezu became angry. No, I am not, but like you, I understand the feeling of being caged and treated like a test subject or a threat. We have appearances to maintain, but you will find we are not your enemies. You, like me, represent a golden opportunity. Whereas I fought to get quirked animals the proper protections and legislations to prevent abuse and unethical experimentation. You will be the first monster admitted to this institution in the open. The monster classification may be rare, but that is not completely due to the rarity of their manifestation. Most have to hide, to reject, who and what they truly are, and that is a travesty. So much potential squandered due to public opinion and a lack of understanding. We aim to fix that, with your help. What do you say, Malice-kun? Izuku closed his eyes and folded his arms in contemplation. Izuku looked at Nezu gravely, adding, I am not opposed, but, a small gesture, a favor, I think that would go a long way in the interest of trust. This was an unexpected situation. Nimari appeared uneasy. If it's the collar, that's not something we can remove outside of a life and death situation. I'm sorry, but that was made abundantly clear during our meeting with the court. Nimari shivered, but Nezu nodded. Izuku actually laughed at that, saying, no, not that. I actually don't mind the collar. Sure, it prevents me from becoming my full bestial self, but if you think that in any way makes me less dangerous, you're a fool. No, I would like you to see about getting someone transferred to your care. Her name is Azunet Kumamoto. She was locked up in the same jail as I was. Her quirk activated during a festival and she got trapped in her monster form. I helped her return to herself, but she created a bit of a panic when her quirk emerged. She's 8, and got stuck for 3 long years. She didn't hurt anyone, but, her parents abandoned her. The police locked her in a cage when they couldn't control her. You get her brought here, maybe have someone foster her, and I will do whatever you require of me. Prove you care about the well-being of my herd, and I will be your pet monster. Nimari was perplexed when she saw Izuku. If that suppressant keeps you human, why didn't it revert her? Why not use these collars to help train children in the control you apparently have? Nezu responded, because that's not how it works. The collar prevents the transition from one to the other. They don't render someone human. Monster quirks are like mutations. Both forms are equally there. Base, form, unlike transformation quirks, where a base is added onto or changed in some way. A monster is a monster no matter their appearance, isn't that right? Izuku snarled at the suggestion that children should be collared like animals due to something they cannot control. Izuku grinned. To do what you're implying, every child regardless of power or background would need to be suppressed and collared for potentially years, and even then, it might not matter. Not all monsters manifest at once. A major trauma is required to fully rouse the beast, like the murder of their mother before their eyes. Nimari stopped and sighed. There have been cases of completely innocent individuals with no visible signs of mutation suddenly exploding into a monstrous form over the loss of a child, a friend, a sibling, or some other major heartbreak. It is that fact that makes us so rare. Not all of us even know what we are. Until our beast awakens the first time, we are impossible to identify even to each other. Otherwise my male donor would have suffocated me in my crib. Nezu raised his paws and said, let's leave this conversation here for now. We can discuss the ins and outs of monster quirks at a later time. For now, I am interested in your capabilities, Malice-kun. I will adjust the tests I intended to put you through in light of your request. Until the little one joins us, I will not ask you to reveal your max abilities, but until then, would it be agreeable to reveal the limits of this form? Izuku laughed. I believe that's fair. It's only logical that you would like to know what I can do should the students be faced with a threat, and I feel the need to protect them. Nezu laughed and said, oh, it is so refreshing to find one who so easily understands my motives. I look forward to this partnership, Malice-kun. Of that you can have little doubt. Nimari wondered, was it really a good idea to let these two meet? As she watched her boss scramble up the teen's body to rest on his shoulder as they started to walk. Nezu needed a week to transfer Azy to Shoto Aizawa's care, and Nimari wanted to adopt her a few days later. Azy had a very loving mother figure, but she still wanted to keep her name. Izuku made sure Nimari understood exactly what she was getting into, and Azy, by herself with only her older brother to console her, told the woman what had set her off. This turned out to be a brilliant idea because it only strengthened their bond, and Izuku was ecstatic. The Bakugo family heard very little about Izuku during the month after the verdict, other than that he was doing well and was working with Ua on a significant project. Katsuki was both anxious and depressed on the morning of the entrance exam. He would be on campus. He would manage to track down Izuku and obtain some information. Izuku, meanwhile, was equally irritated. Shoto Aizawa, the hobo-looking teacher, was leading him around on a novelty silver chain leash. The students didn't need to know that the object, like paper clips, could be broken by any amount of resistance. He saw her at that point. Tall, with a smile and a gleam in her eyes that made his heart race, and long blue hair that curled to partially wrap around her knees. She was laughing with a man with blonde hair, a cartoonish face, and a square chest as she assisted applicants in finding their exam rooms. Izuku felt Aizawa pull him along, and after a brief moment of eye contact, the girl left. The girl appeared worried, but it appeared that she recognized Aizawa, so she merely pouted for a brief moment, and if Izuku's heart could beat more quickly, it did. This girl was too adorable. As they made their way to the observation room so Aizawa could take a nap and Izuku could watch, the applicants kept a safe distance from the teacher. The only thing Izuku said was, "It's going to be a long day." Like Katsuki did everywhere else he went, he trampled on Yue's property. Following him were a few rumors concerning his demeanor or the sludge incident, but he chose to ignore them because he was thinking about more significant matters. Because of this, he simply reached out and caught a brunette who was stumbling and on the verge of falling before turning to leave. He ignored her, but she just stood motionless as he watched the blonde leave as if rescuing her from her own mistake had been instinctive and unnoticed by him. She didn't know if he was arrogant or just being helpful, but she planned to find out. Katsuki searched everywhere for the jumble of green curls that was his objective, but he was unsuccessful. He proceeded to the practical exam explanation site and snarled in his seat after utterly destroying the written exam, as was his duty as Aldera Middle's top student and his brother's future heroic partner. It wasn't working. He quickly discovered the solution he needed to draw his brother's attention and let him know he was searching for him. Katsuki paid little attention to the DJ hero, Present Mike's explanation of the practical and its scoring method. He obtained the Geist, destroyed robots, gained points, etc. He was particularly interested in the 0-point robot. It sounded ideal because nothing was insurmountable and no roadblock would stop him from achieving his objective. It was an obstacle that was meant to be a roadblock, something that couldn't be overcome. Katsuki's journey to City B was brief and uneventful. Anyone who attempted to speak with him or capture his interest was unsuccessful. He would not be stopped. He had a mission to accomplish. When Present Mike came over the speakers to begin the exam, Katsuki was already in motion because he had reached the city's exterior gate and was getting ready to go on a hair trigger. He would simply use the extra time to demonstrate why he was the best, so it wouldn't bother him if these extras wanted to wait around. It was going to be a Bakugo, who would be at the top today. Izuku observed the applicants in the observation room with curiosity. He would make sure to record any monsters that might be present. There were 3 other courses with available seats, even if they were not accepted into the heroic course. If he could, he would assist them and ensure they had an equal opportunity. He grinned proudly when he saw Katsuki, but he was unable to look for very long because one of the applicants was an awakened monster. Without much control, Katsuki kept blasting robot after robot. If he put others in danger with his peculiarity, his Aniki would be disappointed, but at the same time, did these limings have any survival insints? He frequently had to change his direction to avoid turning an extra into a smear for getting in his line of fire, or he had to divert to blast away debris before it crushed some blind idiot. At least the spiky redhead understood the message, even though it was exhausting. At first, he had wanted to tell him to buzz off, but he was sturdy and helpful in preventing others from being affected by his explosions. Guy simply gave him the thumbs up after being struck once or twice on the brink of an explosion. It was nearly enough to gain his admiration. The ground began to tremble at that moment, and a few seconds later, he heard a cry for assistance. The redhead gave him a conflicted look, but Katsuki hurried over to the cry. He didn't see the point of going anywhere else because the shaking was coming from the same direction. He felt the redhead behind him drop into place a moment later. A smart move. Who did it? Who released my Zero? That's my job. Only I have the authority to do so. Power loader, shut that thing down. Nezu roared up in the observation room, looking disappointed and furious. I can't. Somebody's hacked that Zero. It's not responding to my commands. The lanky man said, perspiring as he typed at a terminal. Getting up, Izuku said, I've got this. I'll shut it down. Aizawa sighed as he left, saying, problem child. He didn't even wait long enough for us to release the collar. Nezu was at ease. He won't need it to be. Power loader, you have until he makes contact to shut that thing down, or the repairs come out of your paycheck. When Katsuki and his helper returned, they saw the 0-point robot, a mobile skyscraper. The redhead turned pale, but Katsuki's heart raced and a broad smile appeared on his face. Then, he heard another cry for assistance, and his neck snapped in its direction. Pinched beneath the debris was a girl with a bob of brown hair and obvious blush marks who was almost hysterical with fear and agony. A memory flashed through his mind as she begged for assistance. He was just 3 years old when an older boy shoved him, took his brand new All Might toy, broke it when he sobbed, and threatened to do the same to him if he didn't stop talking. Izuku had arrived at that point. The older boy ran like a hero after he punched him in the face. Now it was his turn. As he shot forward, Katsuki yelled at the redhead to release the girl. Katsuki exerted more effort than before to avoid falling objects. He sidestepped the swiping arms of the Zero. As he got closer to the robot's head, he released smaller, controlled blasts with his other hand while concentrating his quirk into a single blow. When he was in position, he screamed, "This is for you Aniki, Magnam impact," and struck the robot's jaw with an explosive fist, just like Izuku had done to the bully years before, causing it to stagger back. It appeared as though it might fall, but it eventually recovered, and Katsuki was devastated. He had failed. "I see you, Katsuki, and I'm so proud, but let your big brother show you how it's done, one more time." Izuku moved away from a stunned Katsuki before Hellfire spiraled and wrapped around the teen's body. He then felt a pair of arms grab him and carry him to a roof. Izuku used it as an explosive booster to propel himself in the direction of the Zero, and his arm blades changed to point like scythe blades. Izuku roared, "Malefic Headhunter!" as he spun and condensed his Hellfire around the blades. The Zero's head flew free in a flash of green and purple before exploding, landing Izuku on the neck stump. As the robot went offline, he let out a triumphant roar, and everyone, but especially Katsuki, watched in amazement. He was really cool when he found him. Present Mike ended the exam as the two brothers got back together, and they descended to the ground where two teenagers were staring at them in amazement. "So manly, you're both so, you have to teach me. I'm Eijiro Kirishima, please, teach me how to be as manly as you both are," exclaimed the redhead, who had the brunette by his side and assisted her in standing while raising his fist to the sky. The girl grinned and held out her hand, saying, "Ochako Uraraka, and I guess I owe you double now." She sighed at Katsuki's perplexed expression, adding, "I guess you really didn't notice it when you stopped me from falling before the exam. That sucks, but it doesn't matter. Thanks for saving me, I really appreciate it. Well, it was nice meeting you all. Gotta run. See you soon little bro bye," Izuku said as he tensed up and got ready to run. Then he was gone, fleeing as quickly as he could. "Bakugo, you can run, but we both know you can't hide, you oversized house cat. How dare you run off and endanger these children," she said, huffing and growling a little before taking a steadying breath. "All right now dears, who requires healing? Let Grandma Chio kiss away any boo-boos the mean cat man might have given you." The teens were more terrified than ever before. Nejire Hado believed herself to be a decent person. She was always exploring and seeking answers as a child. Her persistent inquiries were deemed weird or annoying by some, but that was their issue. That's what she thought until she realized she was alone once more. It didn't lessen the bitter cold of loneliness, even though she grew accustomed to always being a lone woman against the tide of ignorance and a lone explorer. Her parents did little to assist her. Without her, they also enjoyed exploring. They always felt so empty, even though they sent postcards from all the exciting places they went. But Nejire dreamed that she would be a hero. Heroes saved lives and helped others. They were never alone because they had agencies of friends and were respected. She therefore focused her will and intelligence on Ua, and she was successful. She was in Class B, to be sure, but that was okay. Why was she still by herself when she was attending Japan's most esteemed hero academy? She then got to know Tamaki. Despite being a shy, anxious, and reclusive person, Tamaki Imajiki didn't mind Nejire's insatiable curiosity. She started to brighten through him. At last, she had a friend who also introduced her to Mirio. Mirio Tagata exuded warmth and brightness, a constant source of joy and patience. She quickly and intensely fell in love with him. She put on a mask of brightness that was just as radiant as his after discovering that he was depressed following the catastrophe that was their first sports festival. She continued to wear the mask since it appeared to work and his own sunny smile reappeared. She would never take off her mask if this was what her friend needed. By the end of the first semester, they were dating, and Nejire was ecstatic. Mirio was a man of distinction. Others would have encouraged her to explore their relationship, but Mirio was firm. Until they were ready, they would not engage in any excessively sexual behavior. Najire agreed after they talked about the dangers. She knew that children didn't need to stop the adventure because of her upbringing, but she felt that they should. After putting in a lot of training, the three became the new Big Three by the end of their second year. Her relationship was strained by the continuous training, but that was okay, right? They were a team that could not be broken. They were not secretive. They were content with the status quo. Najire was unaware that she was a cover. She was unaware that her friends occasionally left to train, alone, or the secret of her boyfriend. She was not required to know. Both boys genuinely cared about her, but not in the way she believed, and it would only make her sad. Nobody could have predicted what would happen next. Tamaki never gave the negative effects of increasing the variety of his meals much thought. His peculiarity allowed him to incorporate elements of any animal he consumed, and since clams were so effective, why not try other seafood? He passed on what he didn't like and kept what he liked, including seahorses, urchins, starfish, and even a small pistol shrimp. All Might, the greatest hero and Mirio's mentor, approached him at the same moment. They gave him more power than he could have ever dreamed of, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and private tutoring from the symbol of peace. With that much power, he could accomplish his goal 10 times, maybe even 100 times, making him the greatest hero of all time. He said yes because he could save and protect a great number of people and it would be foolish for him to pass it on. He wanted to celebrate, but he reached out to Tamaki rather than Najire, whom he had left for his meeting with All Might. They ate dinner together. After Mirio shared his knowledge, they celebrated. Mirio didn't yet know any secrets, but the following day he discovered that his agreement with All Might was meant to be kept a secret. Though they were already almost non-existent, it meant that his dates with Najire would become even more infrequent, but that was okay. Najire ignored the loneliness that was beginning to creep up on her. Now she had friends. They would not desert her, wouldn't harm her, would they? Mirio accepted the offer of power, but it came with unanticipated secrets. Mirio had no idea how to explain any of this to Najire, but Tamaki understood. She was too intelligent. He didn't say anything because she would pull on any string he left hanging until she was happy and All Might forbade anyone from finding out. They had stopped talking altogether. Not only were dates being cancelled, but regular get-togethers were also being cancelled, and Tamaki was beginning to behave strangely. He was more emotional, aloof, and prone to sickness. She desperately wanted to know what was happening, to support her friends, and to know what she had done incorrectly, but all she got was silence. Next came the entrance exam for the first year. This was her opportunity. They couldn't get away this time, and she could get her answers. After all, Tamaki became ill and ended up in the recovery girl's office after Principal Nezu personally asked them to assist. It was unexpected, but okay. Mirio would simply provide her with the answers. The entire time they were busy, he was his typical smiling self, but as soon as they were finished, he stopped being that way. He was gone, poof. Najire sulked. It was cheating to wear the uniform that suited his peculiarity. She had seen stranger things, but at least she saw that adorable green-haired boy, Aizawa-sensei, walking around on a leash. Despite his familiar appearance, she was unable to identify him. Perhaps she was feeling the effects of all this stress. When she learned about the Zero halfway home, she saw the adorable green-haired boy's face once more, in a mugshot. Alright, that was truly strange. He was a vigilante, not a villain, so why would A? And he was a monster. That made more sense. She would do anything to ask the many questions she now had. A few days later, Mirio unexpectedly texted her. He was ending their relationship. She was heartbroken, devastated and furious. She was curious as to why. She had to know why. She used their phone's Team Finder feature to locate him. After that raid, she was supposed to have deleted it, but she hadn't, and she didn't care at the moment. Strangely, she rushed over when she discovered he was in Recovery Girl's office with Tamaki, only to discover Mirio kissing him while Tamaki was pregnant. She is really perplexed. Her head is spinning. She is in pain, and then things begin to make sense. The boy who advised them to wait, Mirio. I never touched her more lewdly than a back massage while I waited for marriage. Behind her back, he had been having sex with their friend. Mirio attempted to clarify. He acknowledged his mistake. Because they were both men, he believed it was safe, but he must now man up and take on the role of father to this child. She's shaking. She detests every aspect of this. A part of her yells that it ought to be her, but she flees. She despises Tamaki for tricking her into thinking she had friends, she despises Mirio for cheating, and most of all, she despises herself for being so stupid. She was supposed to be intelligent and perceptive, but she had disregarded every indication. She ought to have anticipated this. She ought to have known better, but her need for a friend made her blind to reality. She hears the whispers as she runs. When Mirio became pregnant, Najire abandoned her after giving it to her. Najire broke down in tears. The least they could do was correct the facts if they were going to propagate rumors. But it didn't matter at the moment. Najire needed a place to hide because she felt like her insides were being torn out. She ran to a gym, crying and by herself, without caring which one it was. And it started. Her body was warping and she was losing control, and the pain that was keeping her grounded in reality was beginning to take on a physical form. Only one person was aware of what was happening, and he would soon arrive. Scales grew and sloughed off in quick succession like black, inky tears. Izuku sensed the change in the atmosphere. Like an impending storm, a pressure in the atmosphere, a wind-borne wave of overwhelming anguish and sorrow. There was a monster emerging, and it wasn't a tiny one. This was strong. It was his responsibility to prevent the potential for widespread destruction caused by whoever this was. Izuku got up from his chair in the staff room, took out his phone, and pressed the panic button Nezu had given him. Aizawa released him from his leash after just one glance. His collar had to be removed because he would need to use every resource at his disposal to defeat this person. Nezu emerged from a vent and was thrown in Izuku's direction as he ran toward the center of what he was sensing, a gym that appeared to be on fire due to the amount of smoke emanating from it. Status report, now, Nezu hissed in Izuku's ear as he entered the code to unlock the collar. Izuku took a deep breath and growled, female. Threat rating. Red. Everyone needs to stay back. This is an incredibly bad situation. I'm going to try capture, but if she looks like she's going to escape, don't let it get that far. Get her under control, by any means necessary. I will not have any deaths on my campus. Is that clear? Nezu sighed, causing the collar to fall off. He replied in a hushed voice, crystal. Hellfire started to swirl around Izuku and pour out of his mouth. When the gym gamma door blew open, a cloud of black smoke swept over the assembled crowd like a wave. Izuku briefly experienced mind-blowing anger and soul-crushing despair before his hellfire destroyed it, making him once again aware of his obligations. Not so fortunate were the teachers. Following a brief period of each teacher attempting to resist the influence, their eyes started to glow slightly, and they all let out animalistic screams, present Mike being the worst. As his coworkers were blasted away, his scream, supported by his quirk, created a small gap between them. When Nezu clawed at his face, Izuku roared in agony and had to push him away. Academically, Izuku knew that Nezu was still an animal, but up until now, the stylish mammal had never let that aspect of himself take center stage. However, Izuku couldn't afford to become sidetracked. He had also allowed the adults to fight. He entered and transformed into the beast he was inside because effects like these could only be stopped by enslaving the person who created them. Izuku saw the new beast for the first time after burning enough smoke away with his hellfire. Izuku appeared to be a cat, but the creature in front of him was obviously a dragon of some kind. An obsidian void curled at the center of the gym, about 14 meters long, making them roughly the same size. However, because of its color, the beast was difficult to read because it mingled with the surrounding darkness. The room was filled with a swirling, spiraling miasma, which did not help anything. But Izuku was certain of one thing. Whoever this was, she isn't at home at the moment. He must defeat her if he wishes to save the lost and unconscious girl inside of him. With a regretful and pitying roar of challenge, Izuku made the dragon stand on wobbly legs. Izuku was unable to give the newborn monster enough time to stabilize and learn how to defend itself because it was still getting used to its new body and skills. Izuku charged forward, trying to knock it over with a shoulder bash to see how strong it was, but the newborn flapped its wings to get away and hovered for a moment. Even though it hurt, Izuku learned something crucial when it crashed into his back. It was a hexapod. Now it had 6 legs. Shit. Fortunately, the newborn was lighter than you might think, so Izuku used his glaive-like tail to bash it away, sending it reeling and skidding across the gym floor. More blows, paw swipes, headbutts, and bashing are exchanged between them. Izuku was aware that he was exhausting her, but she was picking things up quickly. This is really awful. Whoever this person was, she was perceptive, possibly even intelligent, and while that is a positive indication for the future, it was extremely inconvenient at the moment. Nor were the waves of miasma helpful. Izuku couldn't take the chance of attacking and spreading even a tiny bit of his flame cloak with his hellfire. He knew this battle would end if he did. The ultimate malice that he would return when he was dragged under once more. Before the virus-like anger burned itself out inside him, he would kill this girl and most likely thousands more. At that point, a fresh opponent joined the battle. The buff blonde, Tagata, entered through the door wearing an oxygen mask and appeared somewhat battered. It appeared that the teachers were still engaged in their activities, and this man had become somewhat involved. He was the leader of the Big Three, and Izuku had heard of him, but not much else. After all, the teachers only engaged in so much gossip. Thus, the baby must be Hato. Hato only saw him when Tagata walked into the gym, and she instantly started to glow with gold energy veins that matched descriptions of how her quirk had previously appeared. Izuku was aware of this degree of hatred. He played a major role in whatever set her off, which infuriated Izuku more than he would like to acknowledge. Tagata could have done a very small number of things that would have led to this, and the majority of them would have resulted in criminal charges. But for the time being, Izuku would take advantage of this. Hato hurled spinning balls of tarnished gold energy and spirals of miasma at Tagata, but he would either dodge them with arcs of gold lightning or they seemed to simply go through him. Now that she was not concentrating on him, Izuku was able to use two of his beast's ultimate moves, the Hellfire Dash and the Hellspear Beam, to momentarily stun Hato. Tagata seized the opportunity. Tagata attempted to take Hato by the head and push her back and into the ground with a hand covered in gold lightning, but he somehow failed. Instead of palming the side of her head, he caught her face and, more importantly, her eyes because the angle and power were off. Scales quickly covered the area where Hato's eyes had been, and she screamed and flailed in agony as the area was covered in bits of smoke and blood. She was blinded by Tagata. Izuku roared, and whether on purpose or not, the blonde got caught between the two beasts' claws before slamming into the wall. Although he was unharmed, he was unquestionably unconscious and out of the battle. The fight went on for a little while longer, but Hato had little chance against the more seasoned monster because she was blind and in a rage. Hato was beaten, and her beast brain was probably telling her that she was going to die when she collapsed and whimpered in exhaustion and despair after one last roaring explosion of hellfire struck her heart. Instead, in an act of ownership, Izuku nuzzled the side of her head and gave her a slight shoulder nip. There just wasn't a word for what he was doing, as much as Izuku hated to admit it. Though not in a possessive manner, he was claiming her as his problem. For lack of a better word, he was now her alpha, and they both knew deep down that he would keep her safe going forward. It was now a fact rather than a vow or a promise. She was his charge, a part of his herd, as long as she stayed by his side. She saw her alpha standing tall and roaring as her miasma burned away before his might, the last thing she saw before she passed out. As he did, her new vision became blurry, but she was unflinching. This time would be different, her heart told her. Although he wasn't yet her friend, this creature was already so much more than that, and he wouldn't leave her in the dark. Izuku transformed into his human form and went back outside to assist the teachers after the miasma inside the gym was destroyed by fire. When he was outside, he went pale. Recovery Girl was announced as the winner. Chio, wearing an oxygen mask and frowning, sat atop a heap of unconscious teachers. The remnants of her whole supply of sedatives were scattered all around her, but nobody appeared to be in too much trouble. The nurse didn't appear to be pleased with her quirk, which she likely used to further keep the staff out while aiding in their recovery. Izuku made an effort to concentrate on his tasks. Before covering the teachers in a layer that burned off any traces and, when combined with Chio's quirk, forced and lingering bits out of their bodies like an antitoxin, he used his hellfire to burn away the last of the miasma in the air. Anyone hurt inside? Chio angrily asked. Izuku exhaled. I figured out Hato as the new monster, and she's roughed up, but I'll take care of her. She gives off the miasma, so who knows what could happen if you approach. You might be able to help, but more likely you'll get a face full of her dust in the process, and I'm not in any shape to fight again right now. Especially a medic who we can't afford to lose in any situation. Chio murmured, wise, I'd kick your tail. Anyway, any other injuries? You look haggard as well, and I saw young Mirio enter while I handled this lot. Izuku was unable to control the growl that escaped his He's unconscious, and I'm having a hard time feeling any empathy for him given the circumstances. I'll lead you to him and help you remove him for care, but I don't advise he come within visual range of either of us anytime soon." Izuku scowled as he spoke, and Chio moment when he spat. "Injuries to our beasts usually reflect on our other forms. You've seen my scars, and that bastard blinded her. It might not scar, or linger, but her eyes will at least be sensitive when I get her to revert. Hopefully you can help at that point, but if not, I might need assistance not turning that moron into a corpse." Chio gave a nod. "Noted. Led me in, pussy cat. The work has only just begun." Izuku nodded back and led the medic through the torn floor and the debris left by the battle, guiding her inside. At Hato's prone form, Izuku sensed Chio's tension, barely suppressing the urge to assist her. Izuku grinned. "Don't worry, Grandma, we monsters are tough. We heal fast and recover even faster, as you no doubt know. I'll help her heal until she's able to gain enough control for you to take over. This isn't the first time I've had to stop a rampage and look after a new charge. They got to Mirio, and Izuku wept. I don't need to know the details, not until she's ready to tell me, but tell me at least this much. He didn't force himself on her, did he?" Chio exhaled. "I don't fully understand either, and patient confidentiality prevents me from saying anything definitive, but no. I do not believe that has ever occurred at this time, and it was not the trigger." After Chio confirmed that it was safe, Izuku lifted Mirio up and they went back outside to put him with the other victims until medical bots could come and take them back to Chio's office. Izuku sagged as one of the knots in his stomach relaxed. "Thank you." Izuku turned on his heel and went back into the gym, transforming back into a beast. He was ready for anything because Hato needed to be cared for and he had no idea where her head would be when she woke up. He stood watch over her while gently nudging her into a more comfortable sleeping position. When Nejire woke up, the world was dark and she felt uncomfortable. Her body felt unique and different, yet it was unmistakably hers. She attempted to move, but she froze when she heard someone else nearby growl. She wasn't by herself. Although she was unable to see them, she gradually felt as though sand was sloughing off of her and swirling around her. Then, like a blurry sand drawing, things began to take shape. The image cleared even more to add ripples of power, and she felt her quirk activate like a heartbeat. She could no longer make out the fine details, but now everything had a clear outline and shape. When she realized she was much bigger than she should be, she sat down in front of the monster after watching it ripple and shrink. When Izuku noticed Hato awake, he tensed. When he noticed her change, he growled at her in warning. She froze, which was encouraging. He saw more swirling and forming miasma, but it was not the inky cloud he had seen earlier. It had lost its anger and was now thinner. He assumed that it must be something like his hellfire, so he let it swirl around unhindered. Then the antenna, which he had initially thought to be horns, glowed softly golden, and he saw her head focus on him as if she could see him through the thick, scaly growth that now obscured her eyes. Izuku decided to take a chance and transform into his non-beast form since she appeared to be sufficiently composed. A look of disbelief crossed her face. He sat calmly and quietly before speaking. "There is a lot I need to explain to you, Hato-san, but first, I need you to understand you're safe. I don't mean you any harm, but as you are now, you're a danger to yourself and others. I will help you, but to do that, I need you to trust me. The first shift is always painful, confusing, and overwhelming, but in time it will grow to be second nature. You reacted to me shifting so you recognize that I can. That is what I'm going to teach you. This is a very delicate thing though. We need to work slowly and carefully or you might cause yourself excess pain. I can guide you through, and I have experience doing so, but this is completely up to you. Are you ready?" Hato made an attempt to reply, but all he managed to do was hiss a little. This seemed to perplex her once more, and she continued to make noises before scoffing or giggling and turning back to Izuku. This time, all she did was nod with what he thought was a smile, and they started. After forcing her to stand, which was more difficult than it seemed, Izuku had her sit comfortably, much like a dog. He helped her to fully adjust to her beast form by first allowing her thoughts to roam freely throughout her body. He made her roll all 6 of her shoulders, wiggle her toes, and experience the sensation of her new tail and wings. For her, it was incredibly thrilling. He had her begin to will them to change once she had a firm grasp on her form, all of its components, and where they stopped and began. He had her focus on a more familiar shape, not quite her old self, but something similar and new, by taking deep breaths and gently nudging her when her attention strayed. He advised her to let it contract organically, like a muscle, rather than forcing it. Let her form become what it knows it should be while also taking on the new shape. It took hours to complete, and they had to start over several times because she would get distracted by a thought or experience pain, but gradually she regained her identity as Nejire. To Izuku's dismay, the blue-black scales still covered her eyes, her skin appeared somewhat paler, and her once blue hair was now pitch-colored with a faint trace of its former blue, but she was back. She had 2 arms, 2 legs, and no wings, even though the limbs still had some leftover scales and faint claws that she could use to make more dust. She also had 2 tufts of hair that hung and moved like her antennae, but no one would notice unless you knew what they were. Nejire tried to reach out and grab the boy who had aided her after realizing that this form was stable and wouldn't revert to her previous one, which happened a few times during the process. But one of her hair strands shot out and drew him in instead of her arm. She marveled at the sensation of her extra arms, but more significantly, she used her arms and hair to pull her assistant into an embrace, causing him to grunt at her strength. In a tentative tone, brimming with anxiety and gratitude, she muttered, "Thank you." Izuku sighed and returned the hug. "Don't worry about it. It's why I'm here. I'll always be around to help you. As long as you want me to be anyway." He smiled as he walked away. "I expected that to take days, not hours. Sure you weren't in that form long, but usually it takes a lot more work to activate and control the change. Maybe it's all the hero training you've received, but either way, you did an amazing job, Hado." The girl grinned and said, "Nejire. Please call me Nejire. You've helped me so much, it's the least I could." Her face contorted as the events leading up to her metamorphosis struck her, and fat black tears began to flow from the scales covering her eyes once more. Izuku took her hands and began to breathe deeply as the miasma began to swirl with her rising emotions. She realized that he was grounding her, and she clung to that anchor for dear life. "It's nice to meet you, Nejire. My name is Izuku Midoriya, but you may call me Izuku." "Fair is fair," Izuku said, massaging her hands with his thumbs once she was stable once more. Do you mind if I ask questions? About what happened? About what happened to me? About you?" Nejire asked, giggling before averting his anxious gaze. Izuku was just chuckling. "All those and so much more. Don't worry, Nejire, I'll tell you everything, but some things need to stay between us. Stay within the herd, for now. There are people I look out for, people like you, and I don't want them getting hurt. Is that okay? Also, we should go see Chio. She'll be pissed if she finds out we didn't let her check you out." Nejire sighed. "Of course. I wouldn't want anyone to get hurt or put in danger just because I never know when to shut up." "Stupid," air-headed Nejire. In Nejire's vision, Izuku's aura erupted. "I don't want to hear you talk like that again. It isn't true." Izuku reached up and placed a comforting hand on her cheek, which surprised him. "I know for a fact you're not stupid. You're at UA. You fought your way to the top 3 in the heroics course, though I haven't been placed on that scale, so who knows." Nejire was laughing. "As someone who had to fight you in your frenzy state and has only known you for a few hours, I can say without question, you're brilliant and infuriatingly intuitive. I give it a month tops before you're giving me a real challenge for Apex Monster around here, and that's saying a lot. Don't doubt yourself or put yourself down, and for the love of Kami, don't let anyone else's opinion change who you are. You're beautiful, brilliant, and going to be an amazing hero, of that there is no doubt." "Thank you, Izu. Nobody's ever said that to me before." Do, Nejire said, sniffling and giving Izuku another hug. "Will you be my friend? I don't think I have many left." Izuku threw. "Of course, I'm the alpha of your herd. Normally that would make me your big brother, but I think in this case I like friend better." Nejire sighed. "I think I'm older anyway. So, feel like escorting your beautiful friend to see Recovery Girl." "It would be my pleasure. After all, a fairy queen like yourself shouldn't go unescorted," Izuku said, blushing as he assisted her in beginning to walk. Nejire laughed and said, "Then come along my knight. We mustn't keep Fair Healer waiting." They both laughed and clasped hands, but they didn't seem to mind if they did so. Nejire knew it was getting late. Izuku acknowledged he hadn't had time to find out why their clothing didn't tear when they changed, but he was unable to provide an explanation. She blushed when his aura conveyed a different story, not quite a lie, but, no, she had to recall what had happened the last time. He said he was glad they didn't, or else this conversation might be awkward. Once she had been blinded by a bright smile and kindness, but not again. Nevertheless, as they went outside, she could not feel the sun on her at all, so it was dark outside. Izuku responded to her questions as best he could while they were walking, occasionally posing his own queries to find out how she came to her conclusions. She adored it because it was unique. Izuku explored with her instead of giving in to her demands. They were partners mapping the stars and everything they shone upon, and for once she didn't feel like an interrogator. He did occasionally offer minor recommendations, such as restricting the amount of dust she released until they were certain it had no negative effects, but these were merely stops along the way rather than detours or obstacles. Nejire found that she needed her dust to see clearly, but it didn't matter as long as Izuku led the way. She could just let Izuku lead the way and concentrate on the path straight ahead to avoid tripping or colliding with anything. They quickly arrived at the recovery girl's office, and Nejire was shocked to see that every employee was sleeping there. She was informed of what had happened, bowed profusely, and apologized to her teachers after Izuku reassured them that Nejire was okay. Fortunately, Mirio was sent home an hour before they arrived, but other than that, Nejire had changed. She blatantly disregarded Tamaki. The cheerful, slightly obnoxious mask had been removed. She was still expressive and joyful when necessary, but it wasn't the same fake sweetness she had previously displayed. She appeared thoughtful, frowned, and was genuine. Though she remained silent about it for the time being, Midnight saw how close she stood to Izuku and how their hands came together as if they were meant to when she needed direction. But later, she would have to message Yukio. Nejire did her best to explain her new abilities with Izuku's assistance, but she appeared terrified when Chio had to, regrettably, put his collar back on. But Izuku just chuckled. He clarified that no one would compel her to wear a collar, but it was an option if it gave her a sense of control. Although it was out of his control due to a court order, she shouldn't feel compelled to comply because she wasn't an ex-vigilante like him. Nejire, how do you know how much the collar affects me? Nejire asked, looking at everyone in shock as he asked if he was truly okay with losing half of his power. This made him perspire. Nejire cocked her head. Your aura. My quirk allows me to see your strength like a sunburst of energy, and yours just lost half its size. You see auras now, dear? Chio asked, looking confused. Nejire laughed. Yup, and Izu's is the biggest in the room. Though, I don't have much of a scale yet. I might not want to look at All Might till I do. If Izu is this bright, he might actually blind me. Izuku grumbled, you give him too much credit. He's not that much stronger than me. The next thing he knew, he might have purred a little as a pair of slightly clawed fingers played with his hair and massaged his head. Izuku huffed more until Nejire's sweet giggle played in his ear. Don't worry, Izu. I don't care if he's stronger than you. You're my alpha, not him, remember? She said, and the way she said it made his heart skip a beat and he flushed. Present Mike and Midnight gasped and burst out laughing. Shortly after, Chio proceeded with her evaluation of Nejire, and some employees began to leave. That is, until a very anxious young girl ran in and, grunting in a bear-like manner, tackled into Midnight's lap. When AZ arrived to make sure her mother was okay, she saw that Izuku was also present. She turned to the new person in the room after giving her big brother another, Ursa tackle, as it was soon to be called. When Izuku introduced her to Nejire and explained that she was also a member of the herd, she smiled and said, Aniki, Onisan is really pretty. Is she your girlfriend? Her initial shyness was understandable. Izuku tensed, saying, AZ. Oh, I remember now. You said that was for non-monsters, is she your mate then? AZ asked, oblivious to his uneasiness. AZ froze when Izuku growled in embarrassment, saying, you, little sugar bear, have zero tact. No, Nejire is not my mate, and it's rude to assume things like that. Are you saying I'm not good enough, Izu-kun? Nejire pouted and smirked. Your Aniki is a meanie head, isn't he? First he hogs all this adorableness, and then he breaks my heart. What is a poor monster girl to do? I know, Nejire said as she reached out and scooped AZ onto her lap. Then she extended her hand and said, how about we go and get a snack? Maybe braid each other's hair while we get to know each other better. AZ smiled, and after Midnight nodded, they began to walk away hand in hand. However, she smirked at Izuku before they left, saying, I'm not opposed by the way, but you'll have to catch me again first. They then disappeared, leaving Izuku stunned and with bits of hellfire oozing from his ears every now and then. When Tamaki saw the display, the adults simply shook their heads, making him feel even more bad about what he had done. With the obvious exception of Mirio, Najire had been his closest friend. He had done something to her that was so cruel that it literally altered her in an unchangeable way. I'm going to find a way to make this right. I'll make it up to your Aunt Najire somehow, I promise, he thought as he caressed his belly. Izuku was in the staff apartment's kitchen the following morning. They were dubbed the teachers' dorms in jest because they had been constructed a few years prior as a model for Nezu's intended student dorms. The apartments were fairly standard, with 3 rooms per person, an office, a bathroom, and a bedroom, except for the communal kitchen and the spacious first-floor living room. Since Nezu insisted that Izuku have his own apartment, Izuku made breakfast for the staff on a regular basis because he felt a little alone and guilty about it. Izuku yawned in surprise as Najire, wearing an oversized t-shirt, floated down the stairs and headed straight for the coffee. Izuku made an effort to ignore her adorable appearance and the remark from the previous day, but it kept coming back to him. Najire was grumbling. Spit it out, Bakugo. It's early, and watching your aura spike like that is making my head hurt. Something is telling me you're stressed. What is it? Izuku kept on preparing some miso soup and rice. I would have thought you would have gone home after your playdate with Azy. Izuku finished some tamagoyaki and passed it to Najire on a plate, who smiled slightly. He discovered that it was easier to avoid becoming agitated if he kept occupied and avoided looking at her. She looked at him with a sigh. Midnight Sensei let me stay the night. Recovery girl didn't want me to leave campus yet, and Azy is just so cute. Izu, if this is about what I said, I didn't mean it. Not completely anyway, I just got out of a messy relationship, and became a monster girl. I have a lot on my plate right now, so any kind of romance isn't particularly high on my list. Not to mention, we just met. I like you, a lot, but I don't know if that's a side effect of joining your herd. Another example of me being desperate to not be alone again, or something real, and until I know for sure, I just don't think it's a good idea. Izuku laughed. You know, as dumb as it sounds, a part of me is disappointed, but I agree with you. Our world does need a bit of time to get used to, and you have every right to move at your own pace. I'm happy to just be your friend, it's honestly enough for me. Najire consumed a few of her eggs. So what's the plan for today, boss man? My mentor gave me time off while I figure out how to master my quirk again, and you're probably my best option for doing that. Izuku sighed. I didn't have much planned for today. I think Nezu wants me to keep helping Aizawa grade the entrance exams, but you're right, we do have a few things to square away for you. Like? Najire asked, tilting her head. Izuku snorted. Have you tried writing since your beast awoke? Najire froze, and Izuku reached out to squeeze her hand. I thought so. Taking notes is going to be a pain now, but I already thought of a solution. We can get you a keyboard to record notes on and a text-to-speech program to read them back to you, so you can study. Also, as much as I'd like to help you train to control your monster form, you're not there yet. First you need to relearn the other aspects of your quirk. I know it might not seem like much of a change, but we need to make sure you're not overlooking anything. Case in point, you said your vision is particularly based on power auras. If you throw an energy blast, how is your vision affected? Does it naturally get filtered out, which could mess with your aim, or could you potentially blind yourself, like being too close to your own flashbang? I can help you every step of the way if you'd like, but even if you want to handle it on your own, these questions still need to be addressed, and I know how you hate unanswered questions. Please don't make fun of me, Izuku. I know my need for answers is annoying, you don't need to, Najire pouted before looking solemn. Izuku barked. Bullshit. Najire looked away while Izuku held her shoulder. It's not annoying, it's adorable. Seeing your face light up when you discover something new and unexpected is a treasure. I was only getting a bit of revenge for your teasing yesterday. Please never stop looking for answers, because, if you did, you wouldn't be Najire Hado anymore, and that would be a tragedy. Izuku was blushing, especially after finally getting to meet someone who loves learning as much as I do. After a brief moment of sitting, Najire wrinkled her nose and said, the soup is burning. Crap baskets. Now I have to, but I could, Izuku said as she spun around. With a smile on her face, Najire said, he's not what I expected, but that's okay. He's better in a lot of ways. Maybe this whole monster thing won't be so bad, if it brought me to him. Najire blushed, adding, time will tell I guess. The time had finally arrived. For 40 people, it was going to be a fantastic day full of festivities after the UA letters were mailed. A recording starts in one of these students' homes. A green-haired, collared adolescent who appears to be extremely irritated stands with a muscular man who is well known for his heroic majesty. All Might lets out a raucous chuckle. I am here with the results of your admission to the prestigious UA University. With me is a special guest that you may know and see around campus. With this in mind, UA has decided to introduce you all to him as well. Izuku let out a deep breath. Thanks, big guy. Now that everyone is suitably deafened by your lack of an inside voice, I'm Izuku. Yes, I am also the vigilante, Malice. No, I will not sign autographs because I am a hologram. Seeing as I am not a regular student and have tested out of regular classes, I will be a roaming TA. For those that don't know the term, I'm a teaching assistant and will pop up where you least expect it, so, consider yourself warned. Good energy, young Bakugo, but perhaps less malice and more malice, All Might said with a visible drop of perspiration. Izuku sighed. Let's show the results, please. We have a few dozen of these to record and I know your time is precious as Japan's #1. Of course. Now, young Shinso, you did wonderfully on the written exam. Your score was more than enough to qualify for the general course, but you went beyond and attempted our heroic practical as well. All Might whitened briefly before clearing his throat. Behind the recording, whispered pleading can be heard as shadows shift on the wall. The distinct sound of a slap can be heard in the background as Izuku brightened slightly and said, "You have a non-combative quirk, but still showed good combat instincts and a lot of potential." The mighty laughed. While you didn't earn enough points to reach the top 10 for the year, you still scored 14 villain points and 20 rescue points for your cooperative effects in facing the exam. This is enough to qualify for a seat in the heroic course this semester, though only barely. Fear not, in heroics it doesn't matter whether you succeed by an inch or a mile, because the day is still saved and people can know they are safe. Even as the sound of blows grows louder in the background, the two say together, "Welcome to your Hero Academia." The image flashes to the top 10 scoreboard with a note stating that the scores are arranged in villain, rescue, and total order. Bakugo Katsuki, 61, 35, 96. Kirishima Eijiro, 39, 55, 94. Shiozaki Ibara, 36, 32, 68. Kendo Itsuka, ages 25, 40, 65. Ida Tenya, 52, 9, 61. 49, 10, 59. Tetsu. Tokiyami Fumikage, 47, 10, 57. Yosetsu Awase, 50, 6, 56. Uraraka Ochako, 28, 25, 53. Kamakiri Togaru, 43, 10, 53. A tall adolescent with lavender hair and deep bags appears as the hologram fades, hurled against a wall with a busted lip and black eye. He grabs her by the hair as she tries to wriggle away, and then he hisses, "Stupid fucking villain trash. How dare you apply for UA, and what's worse, you cheat your way in." They arrive at a door that leads down into the cellar, and the man punctuates his next words by slamming the teen's head against the frame, saying, "Ungrateful. Pathetic. Villain. Scum." He throws the girl into the darkness with a huff, not realizing that the teen's body starts to change just before he disappears. The sound of something heavy and growing heavier reverberates down the remaining stairs a moment later. The teen is so thin that the man pauses, wondering what that could be, but then he hears bones cracking and goes pale. After taking 2 steps, a bony whip emerges from the shadows and drags him back into the darkness. He's flung back up into the light with a bone-shattering sound, followed by a roar of anguish, triumph, and liberation. Izuku and Najire were amusing AZ while the teachers completed their lesson plans for the next semester. Izuku and Najire were playing a very serious game of hide-and-seek in which they genuinely tried their best to conceal everything from the young girl except their scent, because AZ's quirk, scent track, allowed her to follow any scent the girl had memorized. As they prepared to begin another round, Izuku's expression darkened when he got a call from Nezu. Nezu and Detective Tsukauchi were walking Izuku on a leash 2 hours later. The detective appeared incredibly anxious but clarified, 3 hours ago, neighbors made a noise complaint about what sounded like a large animal. A pair of officers responded and found a body along with the destruction inside. We've removed the body and are processing the scene as quietly and quickly as we can, but we have a monster situation in the cellar. My guys aren't equipped to handle it without lethal measures, and the closest licensed hero is another half-hour away. I'm throwing you a bone, kid. Get it under control before the hero arrives, or I lose jurisdiction to the hero and he'll decide their fate." Izuku frowned and asked, "Who is it?" "Musha," Tsukauchi said, averting his gaze. Izuku sighed, "Fucking great. That settles it. That old prick will kill them for sure. Probably demand to make a new suit or weapon out of them too, or have you forgotten how he got his favorite black armor?" Tsukauchi exhaled, "I didn't make the call, and it wasn't up to me. I shouldn't have even reached out to you, but that thing could be a kid. I heard how you helped the bear girl. I really hope you can do your magic again." Izuku lifted his shoulders. "This is going to suck without my beast, but I'll make it work. As soon as you can, pull back your guys. I can smell it's asleep, and it's not going to like me invading its territory. Could bring the house down in the process, and I'd rather not have anyone getting hurt if we can avoid it." Izuku went inside after Tsukauchi nodded. It appeared somewhat worn and old, but not particularly dangerous, which was a terrible sign. The monster and a corpse were all that was left after what was obviously a fight. That didn't mean no one else had been here, but the police had broken down the door and nothing looked stolen, so it wasn't a robbery. The most likely scenario stated that only the two were involved, indicating that this monster already had a body count aside from the most regrettable accident in history. Bad. When he was close, Izuku guided himself with his nose and detected the scent of 3 donors' blood. Differentiating the 3 would have been challenging in the past, but he was able to do this much because of some missing people he had assisted in locating. Until he arrived at the second donor's contribution, he followed the blood and indications of a fight. It must be the victims, because it was only in this one location. Izuku pointed out pieces of skin and hair to an investigator so they could be bagged and processed as the others proceeded to the door. Before Izuku moved through and into the darkness, photos were taken of the dents, cracks, and old claw marks. Izuku noticed a sleeping monster down below that was perhaps a little smaller than Nijire's beast and about the same size as his own. If Nijire had been a void, this would have been a mound of snow, but it was white with more cream-colored bony, armor-like parts. A wing partially obscured its face, so Izuku could only see one horn sloping down toward its jaw. The other was a broken and jagged object. Izuku glanced around the room and noticed a worn blanket, a rusting chain, and a muzzle with traces of old blood smeared into the seams. Izuku motioned for a detective to enter covertly. It took some persuasion, but the muzzle was bagged and photos were taken. The girl wished him luck and fled right away, only pausing to inform Izuku that they were now pulling out. Izuku stifled a growl as he crept closer. Malnutrition had already made this monster weak, and he had been correct to note the wounds that were already there. They had been mistreated, whoever they were. Unfortunately, Izuku could only feel his chest tighten at the sight of the bloodshot and swollen left eye as the monster stirred and took a deep breath, its eyes snapping open in fear and rage. Before he knew it, the old foundation was failing and 4 whips covered in bone were flailing around. Izuku tried to stop the blind attacks by igniting his hellfire, but much to his dismay, the whips began to glow slightly and absorb the wisps, becoming stronger in the process. After the ceiling creaked, everything began to fall. Outside, they witnessed the 1-story house tremble and fall in on itself. Nezu began biting one of his paw's fingers as the officers and bystanders gasped. The detective and Nezu began to approach when they thought it had subsided, but the silence was broken by 2 roars and an explosion of debris. With caution to avoid his arm blade, Izuku charged into the face of the already wounded and worn-out monster in the crater and batted it with his arm. After that, the frightened monster was quickly knocked out. Its purple eyes seemed to be begging for whatever was happening to stop, and Izuku was resolved to do just that. It ended with a headbutt, and Izuku began tending to it. "Leave, butcher of innocence. You are not welcome here," Izuku roared in warning as he heard and smelled Yoroi Musha arrive. The hero laughed. "Uppity beast doesn't know his place. Officers, remove him, and put him in a cage like the rest of his kin. I have a monster to slay." As he turned to face him, Tsukauchi said, "Musha, this situation is contained. I apologize for disturbing you, but your services are no longer required." As he turned to go, he spat at Nezu, saying, "Mark my words, detective, you lay with beasts and monsters. I will feel no pity for you, when you wake up in one of their teeth." The hero's face contorted in disgust. "You progressive infants are going to get people killed. Back in my day, a beast was a beast, and that was it. Your generation has forgotten how dangerous these beasts are. After he left, Nezu moved to the crater's edge while the police dispersed the gathered crowd. We need to move. Do you think you can get him to revert anytime soon? He sighed, looking down. Izuku nodded. No, I don't. He shows signs of abuse, predating his awakening. Just getting his trust might take more than a day. Any idea who he was? Any features or marks that could help me narrow it down? Tsukauchi asked, taking out a laptop. Izuku sighed, between 12 and mid-20s. He's gone through puberty, but depending on how long this malnutrition has been going on, I can't give you a better estimate. Start with other residents. There was well, I wouldn't call it a bed down there, but someone survived there. His eyes are purple. I'm sorry, but physical features can change drastically post-awakening, and then even more in beast form. Tsukauchi murmured. The only other occupant was a foster girl named Hitomi. She had purple eyes though. Izuku chuckled. Well, isn't that a trip? I thought my big sibling was the only one like this. Nezu was angry. I like a mystery, as you know, but we lack time, so you're going to have to spoil this one. What do you know? Izuku kept on chuckling. Protogeny. Some animals start as one sex and grow up into the other. My big sibling had something like this happen. Born a boy, but was in a horrible accident in their early teens that triggered their awakening. Woke up a whole lot more feminine, but not complete protogeny in their case. They're genderless now, and loving it. I'd need to confirm it later, but I think this was a subconscious choice. Would explain the wonky blood too. Izuku continued with a confused expression on his face. There were 3 blood traces inside the house. The one I'm guessing belongs to your corpse, and a pair of what I thought were siblings, but if they really went through rapid protogeny then it could be from one person, simply pre- and post-awakening. Either way, we need a transport, unless one of you can convince the number 1 hero to carry him to UA. The 2 adults exchanged looks. This is bullshit. I'm not complaining, but still, utter and complete bullshit, Izuku said, standing in the gym where Nejire had been destroyed 30 minutes after All Might had gently set the new monster down. With a shrug, All Might said, consider this my first of many apologies, Bakugo-san. Okay, thank you big guy. Now, please, I have a lot of work to do, and your presence will only distract them, Izuku said, letting out a sigh and rubbing his eyes together. Izuku sighed as All Might nodded and said, of course. Have a good day. The hero departed. Izuku approached the monster and started the process of rousing it. They were in for a drawn-out procedure. Nejire, however, arrived a few hours later to join them and learn how to soothe and assist other newborns. She was kind, and Izuku relished the chance to impart his knowledge and spend more time with the ebony beauty. Katsuki was thrilled. A week had passed since he received his letter, and it had been exciting to see his older brother next to the greatest hero. One of Mitsuki's sons standing on the same stage as All Might and not being overshadowed by him made her laugh. Izuku and Yue's ongoing radio silence didn't sit well with either of them, but his appointment as Ata helped allay some of their complaints. Katsuki continued to communicate with Ochako via Eijiro. The blonde hadn't thought much about her yet because of Izuku, but he still thought she was cute. Katsuki concealed his tie in his pocket, concentrating only on getting to Ua so he could finally face Izuku. He could be forced to wear the torture device by force if someone so desired. Katsuki stomped toward Ua after his mother kissed him goodbye on the head. He would fight it more, but the hag had needs too. He only took a brief detour to the train station to ensure Eijiro wouldn't get lost, and he was taken aback to find Ochako and a pink girl accompanying him. Mina Ishido met the illustrious Katsuki Bakugo in this way, and he discovered a soulmate. Mina told Katsuki a little more about Malice, and they gushed about how awesome Izuku was the entire way to Ua. Since reuniting with Izuku and learning that he was the vigilante, Katsuki had attempted to look into it over the past year, but by then most of it had been redacted, and obtaining an entry key to a vigilante's fan page was infamously challenging. They lived in extremely closed communities and were extremely wary of strangers. After all, no fan wanted to be in charge of getting their favorite hero arrested, and vigilantism was against the law. Since Mina was a core page moderator, she was actually his ticket in. In fact, she was one of the victims of a Creature Rejection Clan (CRC) attack that Malice stopped. She was practically as big of a fan as Katsuki and had been an active supporter of his ever since. The 4 of them headed to the 1A classroom, where Mina laughed that the doors were high enough for Malice to enter without stooping, even though the space wasn't large enough to test the idea without damaging a lot of furniture. The other three were social, but Katsuki stood up to put his feet up and look around the room. A girl with long green hair and a stoic face, a boy with bicolored hair who was scarred, another who was just a floating uniform, and the one who was now rigidly lining it toward Katsuki were among the others already there. He was tall, had short blue hair, and wore glasses. Katsuki didn't think he was a big threat, but he was moving quickly, perhaps he had a speed quirk. And that was promising. The rigid kid cut the air. I must insist you remove your feet at once. Have you no respect for this prestigious institution or our upperclassmen that no doubt used that desk before you? Katsuki sighed and narrowed his eyes. Firstly, I have low blood pressure due to my quirk, so I need to elevate my feet from time to time or I end up swelling. Second, UA as an institution has to constantly rotate out desks and other furniture because of the wear and tear they go through, so there is no guarantee that anyone has ever sat in this desk in particular before, and I wouldn't care if they did because that's stupid. It's a desk and no matter who sits in it, that won't change. Third, I'm not going to take etiquette advice from someone ruder than me. I'm not the one who charged over here full of judgment without an introduction or any attempt at finding out my name or if I have a valid reason for what I'm doing. Please check your privilege at the door before you embarrass yourself further. You are correct. That was improper of me. I am Tenya Ida, formerly of Sumei Academy. I apologize for my previous actions. I see your point, but I must insist you still remove your feet. I would be happy to help you find an alternative though, the boy said, halting as he processed what had just happened and then robotically bowing his head. Katsuki frowns as he scratches his chin. Sumei explains the elitist attitude. Let me make this simple for you, Robo-Dick. Fuck off. Your voice is grating and your attitude is pissing me off. I tried to be civil cause I was in a good mood, but you've ruined it. Piss off or get knocked out. I don't care which. Kirishima intervened before Ida could do more than sputter, saying, Bakubro, that wasn't cool. What would Baku Onisama say if he heard you? Ida-san, I'm sorry about him. My name is Eijiro Kirishima, and my friend is Katsuki Bakugo. Ida frowned in shock and horror. Snarling, Katsuki said, Don't remember saying we're friends, shitty hair. That explains it all. You're related to that reprobate Malice. Why our seniors have seen fit to allow him here is beyond me, but I suppose learning what not to be can be very. Ida frowned as Kirishima simply laughed. Don't you fucking dare talk about my brother, you discount vibrator. Pull your head out of Hoover's ass you've been shoved in and listen closely because I'll only say it once. Shit on my brother, and you're dead. Katsuki yelled, slamming his popping palms against the desk. The two appeared prepared to engage in combat when they heard a low growl coming from the door and saw Izuku enter while wearing a black leash and a UA uniform. They thought the unkempt black-haired man behind him was his purple-haired son because their eye bags matched. The man appeared to be homeless. Over his uniform, the purple-haired teenager wore what appeared to be a faded purple-gray poncho, and a ring of bony growths around his face added to his intimidating appearance. Izuku turned to the boy and muttered in a softer voice, Hitoshi, you too. Don't worry, you're safe here. Izuku frowned and said, in your seats, now. I will not have future heroes embarrassing themselves like this. The boy sat behind Katsuki, his lips quivering as he whispered back, thanks, Izu-ni. The adult went to the desk, and Izuku stood beside it with his arms folded, showing off his arm blades as his narrowed eyes scanned the students. I am your homeroom teacher, Shoto Aizawa, and as you've seen, this is Izuku Bakugo, the adult sighed. Do you have something to say, Ida? He asked, narrowing his eyes at Ida's glare. Ida clenched his hand. I require clarification. That filth is not a hero, thus he does not qualify for employment at UA. Our acceptance letters claim him to be a teaching assistant, but this was clearly a trick or an error. We are to be heroes, and thus have nothing to learn from scum no better than the hero killer. This farce must end so that we may focus on what really matters. Izuku noticed that Aizawa's eyes were starting to a hand to thwart him and smiled as he to the teenager who was still standing. And what, pray tell, do you believe, really matters? I find it hard to counter such a vague and childish argument. Ida became agitated, but Izuku wasn't. If you believe you have nothing to learn from me, you are ignorant and unworthy of that seat in this class. I am sure your brother has told you this before, because he is a stellar hero in my opinion, but experience is the greatest teacher, and I have experienced a fair bit. You are right, I am not employed by the school. I am enrolled as a student, the same way you are, but my attendance is not voluntary. Sharing my knowledge is a part of my penance for being a vigilante. You are not mandated to listen to me any more than you are any of the staff members, but you would be a fool to squander intel when it is freely given. Ida laughed. Then I will endeavor to ignore your toxic and tainted opinions until they see sense, and send you to Tartarus like the diet villain that you are. Ida sat and continued to ignore Izuku's laugh out loud. Well then, for those of you not caught in a state of mental infancy, and pouting like a child, I will give you your first lesson. It is both simple and profoundly important. Many say they understand the purpose of heroes and heroics in general, but many have forgotten what it is while deluding themselves that they have not. Izuku maintained a straight face. That purpose is to save lives, by any means necessary. Should you graduate, it will not be into a black and white land, it will be to a sea of gray. Your choices will determine lives. Who lives, who dies, and livelihoods are at your fingertips. You will never stand on solid ground because you will never have a complete view of any situation, but you have to make those choices regardless. People will die on your watch. Good people will suffer because of you, but that is the price we pay in blood, sweat, and tears. The class looked at Izuku in horror, but Aizawa nodded as he took over. You will lose friends, family, and sleep because of this calling. Heroics is not a job. It is a lifestyle. We do not punch out, and if you believe the lie that a hero is ever off duty, you can leave now. No mother wants to hear your excuses while they hold their dead child. You will be haunted by thoughts of, could I have done something different, for the rest of your days, but there is no greater feeling than seeing the faces of people you've saved. This lifestyle is hell, but it is a hell we walk to make a difference. This is not a popularity contest. You will face the worst things imaginable, and depravity beyond even that, but you will not falter if we at UA have anything to say about it, and that includes malice here. Aizawa pulled a bag of sealed sports uniforms from under the desk. With that in mind, grab a uniform and get dressed. You are taking a Quirk assessment exam, now. You have 10 minutes to arrive at Field Delta, or you can consider yourself expelled. With a growl, both teachers said, class dismissed. They then left together without saying anything more. After a brief period of silence, Hitoshi and Katsuki stood up and followed suit while holding their uniforms. The others stirred a moment later and snatched up their uniforms, but their enthusiasm was lacking. While some glowed with renewed resolve, many had much to think about. So you're shy. Gonna need to fix that. Heroes are expected to be bold and decisive while making people feel safe, like Izuku. Speaking of which, you Aizawa's kid. I saw you come in with them. Katsuki, who arrived at the locker room first, was about to change when he heard a stall door close and lock, causing the boy to scoff. Hitoshi breathed deeply. I'm not shy. I'm just not used to this yet. A lot has changed recently and I'm still adjusting. As for Aizawa-sensei, no. I've always been a fan of Eraserhead, but he's not my dad or anything. You're Katsuki, right? The blonde sighed and took a deep breath. Izu-ni said I could trust you. That you'd understand, but I'm not ready yet, and, frankly, I don't know you, so I'm not going to spill my guts to a guy the first just met. I'm just not that kinda girl. Katsuki paused for a moment before grumbling. Well, if that's what Izuku suggested, I'd seriously consider it. My big brother is smart and strong. I'm training to catch up, but I'm not there yet. Talk when you wanna talk and not a fucking moment sooner, ya hear? I don't know you either, but if you're one of his fans that makes us cool at least. I'm aware I can be an asshole, but unless you're a prick like Robo-Dick, it doesn't usually come from a place of actual anger. Shrink says I just have a aggressive personality. I think he gets paid too fucking much if that's all he's got. After she had changed, nobody's here yet. If we hurry, you can slip out before they arrive. Otherwise this place is gonna be full of naked guys, and from the sounds of it your fear-maiden heart won't be able to handle that. The fuck do you mean by that? Snarled Hitoshi. Kitsuki laughed. You slipped up. I don't care, and I'm not going to, but you referred to yourself as a girl. Not sure about your situation, but I can keep a secret. Just get your ass out here, or you'll be late and Izuku will be disappointed. After blushing at their mishap, Hitoshi emerged from behind the door and said, I was a girl until a week ago. I guess. Huff, I never felt comfortable before. Now is better, but I guess a small part of me still hangs on to Hitomi because I don't know who Hitoshi is yet. I'll keep your secret as long as you want, bag eyes. You're under my brother's wing, so you're under mine too. Just don't slow me down. I expect you to keep up and not disappoint us. Katsuki smirked and lightly knocked on Hitoshi's forehead. To Katsuki's surprise, the taller boy gave him a hug after Hitoshi grinned. Hitoshi jumped back in shock when the other guys began entering and noticed the strange sight. He then moved the poncho he was still wearing to cover his face without touching it. With a frustrated huff, Katsuki grabbed his other shoulder just a little too roughly and used it to lead Hitoshi out. The others were perplexed, and some of them rolled their eyes in disapproval. As Ochako tried to calm Mina down while she was upset with the girls, he said, "Mina, don't let Ida get to you. What is it you told me? You can't let stupid people make you do stupid things." But Chako, that was so out of line. How dare he talk to Baku-sensei like that? Mina threw up her hands in exasperation. With a laugh, Ochako said, "Got it bad, don't you? No, I'm not one of those stereotypical girls who fall for a guy after he rescues her, or one, hot for teacher. Thank you very much, I just really respect him." "Is that so wrong?" Mina sighed, her pink skin flushed purple. The girl with green hair and a large hand face rested her finger on her chin and thought, "I don't think so, Kiro. He's saved a lot of people. That's definitely respectable, but at the same time, I understand the premise of Ida-san's argument." Both girls turned to her but she kept going, "Vigilantism is a crime. As heroes in training, we shouldn't look up to a criminal, Kiro, but I think he's wrong to disrespect and disregard Bakugo-sensei. He's not a vigilante at the moment and he freely admitted during his trial that what he did wasn't right. He might be a criminal by definition, but shouldn't it matter that he's choosing to pay for said crimes, Kiro? When does a criminal stop being a criminal, and become a normal person again? Kiro, because he doesn't seem like a bad guy to me." Ochako replied, "He's not. Kirishima and the Bakugo brothers saved me when I got trapped by the 0-point robot during the entrance exam. They saved my life, even if Ua insisted I was never in any real danger. They're really strong, and if he's willing to teach me to be strong too, I don't care who he used to be. He's trying to be a hero, just like us, and I think that matters, especially now that he's doing it the right way." Toru Hagakure, the invisible girl, laughed when a few other girls nodded, saying, "It helps that he's cute too. Not gonna lie, bad boys are sexy. You're not wrong. He can apparently take RPGs to the face too, so a guy like that has to be strong. Whomever bags that catch is a lucky person." Mina raised a hand to give her transparent classmate, Momo Yaoyorozu, the tallest of them, a high five. While getting dressed, the girls kept talking and getting to know one another, and by the time they came out, their mood had returned. If they were going through as difficult a period as they had been told, they were eager to become friends. A few friends by their sides to support them couldn't be a bad thing if they were truly going to face hell. "You gonna keep being a little shit-catchin'? 'Cause I know mom raised you better. Now say it." The serious teen they had previously met was grinning and holding Katsuki in a headlock when the rest of the class arrived at Field Delta. Katsuki was wailing, "Never. That old hag didn't teach me shit. Let me go, before I blast your pussy tail back to Siberia." Izuku laughed. "Good luck with that, brat. You don't have the firepower. Also, Siberia is beautiful this time of year, so don't threaten me with a good time. Now say it." After squirming and growling, Katsuki snarled, "Fine, you fucking win. I'm sorry Aizawa-sensei, I didn't mean to disrespect you by implying you sleep under bridges." Izuku said, "That's better. You haven't earned the right to harass him yet. He is your teacher and you will respect him." He nodded and let go of his brother's head. "According to Aizawa, that's rich coming from you, problem child. 5 whole minutes without panhandling, you're really improving. I'm proud of you," Izuku said, turning to glance over his shoulder. "Bold words," sneered Aizawa, "for someone on a leash." Izuku looked around. "Don't get this relationship twisted, hobo man. You're the one on the leash." "Then explain why I'm the one holding the leash, furball," Aizawa grimaced. Izuku simply laughed and said, "Giving you a task keeps you out of trouble." When they saw that everyone was at last there, they both ceased their arguing and reverted to their severe manners. Aizawa turned to his pupils and said, "You are going to take a quirk apprehension exam. The 8 physical exams you're used to, but this time you have no excuses to do less than your best because you get to take advantage of your quirks as well. The old geezers at the Ministry of Education might be behind the times, but we at UA are not. You are not all created equal, and it's moronic to treat you like you are. These tests are just to set a baseline for your growth. Izuku raised his eyebrows. Welcome to the starting line, because this is where your heroic journey begins. Getting here was the easy part, so prepare to be pushed beyond, plus ultra. It's good that you're fired up, problem child, because you're going to show them how it's done, Aizawa sighed as the class applauded. Izuku grinned and rolled his eyes before catching the ball Aizawa threw at him. You know what I expect, but for the rest of you, this is the ball throw. Stand in the circle and throw. As long as you remain inside, anything goes. After giving Aizawa a nod, Izuku moved into the circle. To the amazement and horror of the students, he threw the ball up a few times to test its weight and durability before grinning and letting out wisps of hellfire from his body. Izuku threw the ball, concentrating it all around it, and when it was sufficiently far away, he lit his hellfire, causing it to shoot off with tremendous force. Ida charged at Izuku. I knew you were up to something. That collar is clearly fake. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to use your quirk. I insist this villainous reprobate be arrested immediately for violating the terms of his deferred sentence. Aizawa sighed in frustration, but Izuku laughed in his face. Once again, you prove uninformed and depressingly misinformed. This collar isn't fake. It's not designed to fully suppress my quirk. There isn't one in existence that can. This limits my output and prevents me from changing form, but that doesn't matter. There isn't a staff member present that can stop me at the moment, collar or not. I might as well be All Might for all they will be able to do. Izuku looked away. I'd have said endeavor, but I won't. Accidentally, kill anyone to get away. Bastard. Anyway, point is, you need to pull the stick out of your ass and start paying attention. I am here voluntarily. I could leave anytime I wanted, but I don't because I made a commitment to help prepare all of you for the world you're walking into. Keep getting in the way, and you'll find yourself kicked out of this class or even the school. Your behavior is hovering close to harassment. I'd say bullying, but to do that you'd have to intimidate me, and you don't. Now get out of my face and focus on the tests before you disappoint your brother any further. A constipated scowl twisted Ida's face, but he stomped back away when he saw no one behind him, especially Aizawa. With a sigh, Aizawa's phone beeped and displayed Izuku's 1.4-kilometer distance. Losing your edge, little kitten. Aizawa smirked as the students stared in disbelief. Izuku sighed and said, eat gas station tuna salad, ya lanky spook. You know this thing limits me to half strength. The pupils went pale, but Aizawa insisted, excuses, excuses. You wanna go, goggle jockey? I could use the warm-up. Izuku snarled. We'll start another test. Get ready for the 50-meter dash while we wait for one of the robots to return with the ball, Aizawa said, turning his gaze back to the students. Despite appearing completely perplexed, the students continued the tests. In the dash test, Izuku was neither slow nor the fastest. His example frequently set the highest point that any of them could achieve in the other tests. In a show of self-control, Izuku set the pace for the endurance run and the sit-ups while not ruining the grip test. But more than anything, the students saw that he was constantly on the go. In endurance competitions, he urged them to exert more effort, delve deeper, and never give up while occasionally offering advice when technique was required. For example, Izuku demonstrated to Sue a variation on her typical frog squat that allowed her to increase the force of her jumps, but she had never tried it before because it was a little uncomfortable to use repeatedly. Izuku also suggested a chemical to Mina. She was actually quite skilled at chemistry involving her quirk, and she almost kissed Izuku after he showed her how to stabilize a variation of her slightly acidic lubricant. Instead, she used it to win the endurance run. He was able to have a private conversation with two students in particular during these brief, tutoring sessions about something very important. In his opinion, he knew what they were. He gave them his phone number so they could reach him if they needed assistance or just to talk, but he wouldn't out them. They reluctantly accepted them, but they felt uneasy about taking any other action. Hitoshi's forced admission that his poncho wasn't a poncho was the other significant development. It opened up during the long jump so they could see them for what they truly were, wings. In addition to his remarkable strength score from using an organic whip for the strength test, he received a lot of questions. The class was surprisingly encouraging, especially Katsuki, who at last understood the boy's strong attachment to Izuku. Both of them were monsters. Katsuki suppressed his feelings of jealousy at this stranger's ability to share something with Izuku that he was unable to. No one could alter the fact that Izuku was his older brother first. They would always have that connection, which was very beneficial. They had a deeper brotherhood. It was more than a name or reassuring moniker. Since Mitsuki had been fixated on adopting him as a last farewell to Inko, they were literally brothers. It was more than a name. Izuku was now a Bakugo, and since they were his family, he would never have to experience loneliness again. Ochako blushed and nodded nervously as Mina whispered something in her ear while Katsuki was preoccupied. A few people took advantage of the fact that Hitoshi was now a monster to ask questions, and he tried his best to respond. He was pleased to draw Izuku's attention when he was unable to. They found Izuku to be a patient and informed resource, and it was a nice way to unwind in between each team's turn at the tests. Baku-sensei, if a herd is a group of monsters and Alpha takes under their protection, what would it be if you did the same for non-monsters? Mina then poses an intriguing query. Izuku thought about it for a moment before smirking. Well, an alpha doesn't always pick their herd, not completely. It's an instinct, a draw to people that need my help, and who are open to accepting said help. With that in mind, I don't think there has to be much of a distinction. Maybe, herd adjacent, it wouldn't be the first time a non-monster has joined a herd after all. I met a few monsters with non-monster mates and I can say without a doubt they were every bit as much a part of the herd as anyone else. Thank you, Mina. I'll make it a point to correct the official definition. A herd is made up of any beings under an alpha's protection. Yes, I like that much better. Mina was blushing. So, with that in mind, does that make all of us a part of your herd? You know, since we're kind of all under your protection as your students. Izuku stared at her intently, making Mina's he replied, if that is what you want, I suppose, but I think this is a discussion to have later. There are more aspects to membership than what we have discussed so far, and I won't allow anyone in until they understand what they're agreeing to. There is an implicit trust one must have in their alpha, something monsters feel in their bones that I'm not sure is present in non-monsters. Also, if I were to give a command I would expect it to not be questioned. I don't make commands lightly, mostly only in a life-threatening situation, but I have to know it will be followed or the bond won't form. Bond? Tokiyami asked, tilting his head. Izuku sighed, so let's say Hitomi was in danger and needed my help. The bond would let me know. It's hard to explain, kind of like a low-grade empathy link I guess, and the stronger the bond I have with someone the clearer it is and greater the distance it works at. He closed his eyes and grinned, like right now I can tell one of my little sisters is hungry and looking for more honey cakes while her mom is distracted and the other is alone and afraid. Izuku's face twisted with rage. The others took a step back, but Hitoshi pulled him back by placing a hand on his shoulder and saying, Don't worry Izuni, you said they were strong. I'm sure they have it under control. Izuku took a deep breath and said, Thank you Hito. You're right, I need to stay focused. Once I have things in place, I'll be able to call them and keep them safe. I just need to be patient. The tests went on until roughly halfway through the last test, at which point Izuku turned to face the school and yelled, Aizawa, Hato is having a meltdown. Izuku nodded and blasted off in a burst of hellfire, leaving Ida frowning once more but remaining silent. Aizawa sighed, Go, I've got this handled, but I expect to see you both in Nezu's office as soon as you're done. How about we make this more interesting? Whomever scores the best on their throw gets to ask the other two to do one thing one time. What do you say? She asked, blushing and grinning, as she ran up to the other two after Ochako, Katsuki, and Hitoshi finished the ball throw. Katsuki simply scoffed and said, This is a chump's bet. I'm in. Easiest win ever. Hitoshi appeared anxious. Hitoshi sighed, Fine, but nothing too embarrassing please. Ochako grinned. Don't worry Hitoshi, Ochako said with a smile, I'd never do something like that. With a sigh, Hitoshi approaches to take his turn. He turns to a boy with a black lightning bolt in his blonde hair while holding the ball in one hand and says, Hey Denki. With clouded eyes and a zombie-like posture, the boy turned and said, Ya bro. Denki charged up and launched a bolt of lightning at Hitoshi without hesitation, leaving everyone wondering if he had gone insane. However, Hitoshi's whips emerged from his wings and acted as lightning rods to absorb the charge, and he concentrated all of it into a single whip, wrapped it around the ball, and slingshot it as hard as he could, producing a sound that sounded like a combination of thunder and whip crack. Hitoshi sighed, Hit me with your quirk. Denki was startled out of his reverie by the sound just in time to watch the ball fly off like a comet. He turned to face a sheepish Hitoshi before charging ahead and giving him a big smile and a high five. That was awesome. How did you accomplish that? My original quirk allowed me to put people into a suggestible state, according to Izuku, Hitoshi said, averting his gaze. Everyone else told me it was mind control, but he insisted there was a difference. I can absorb elements with my whips as part of my monster quirk. I can essentially force people to attack me, absorb it, and then throw it back stronger thanks to a dual quirk. I am aware that I am a freak. I apologize. Pause, Denki said, raising a hand. Your peculiarities are fantastic, and you're not a freak. If I could be that cool, I would do anything. That was the first time I've ever been able to throw lightning like that because I struggle with control. I might be able to train with your help. That would be really awesome. You don't hate me now? Blinked Hitoshi. Of course not. Denki shook his head. Even if my quirk doesn't work, you're still awesome, so we should still hang out. You might be the key to me finally learning how to use it better. With a smile, Hitoshi said, I'd like that. As they were enjoying themselves, Aizawa displayed Hitoshi's score of 896.2 meters. Katsuki sneered and got ready for his own throw, concentrating all he knew about his quirk and how to make the most of it. Watch this Anarchy, was all that was on his mind as he got ready to throw. I'll show you how much I've grown, he said, launching the ball and watching as a force wave from the ensuing explosion swept over everyone in the vicinity. The ball flew for a while before Aizawa's phone recorded a result, 706.8 meters, and Katsuki fell to his knees, feeling crushed. He then watched as Ochako entered the circle, winked at him, made the ball glow pink, and threw it straight up. Aizawa's phone made a new sound a few minutes later, and he scoffed, revealing an infinite result. As the rest of the group gaped, Katsuki began to laugh and then burst out laughing uncontrollably, giving Ochako a stern look but a broad smile and saying, You played us. You played us for fools even though you knew we couldn't defeat you. Don't worry, bomb boy, Ochako laughed, shrugging and sticking out her tongue. I have tricks. Unless you want to. I don't know. Got some mochi after class. I'm banking that favor till later. Ochako winked at him once more. You know what? Sure, Katsuki grinned. I suppose you should be rewarded because you're the first girl to ever outsmart me. Excellent, blushed Ochako. Then, I'll see you later. Katsuki simply kept grinning. The class dispersed to change back out of their sports uniforms after Aizawa showed the final results, but Katsuki, who usually would be upset about finishing fourth in the class, was getting what he had always wanted, and he would use this as motivation to train even harder and become the class's top student. He would earn his spot next to his brother, and they would become an unstoppable team. This development with Ochako was a little unexpected, but she was cute, and it wouldn't hurt to find another rival, especially one he wouldn't mind seeing opposite him every time they challenged each other. Mina giggled and said, Thank you, as Ochako picked her up and spun her around as soon as the girls entered their locker room. I'm grateful, as you said, it worked perfectly. Oh Kami, I have a date. Ochako exclaimed, freezing and beginning to breathe heavily. Oh no, if I mess this up, he won't like me, I'll die alone, and... Mina took hold of her shoulders and said, Slow down, Chako. You'll be alright, I've got you. This is going to be fantastic. You'll see. Okay, Ochako said, shivering and crying before giving her new best friend a hug. I have faith in you, Mina. Don't worry, Chako, Mina winked. I won't abandon you, even if this doesn't work out. Like in that old movie with the best friends, we can simply age together. I will always be there for you. You're the best, Ochako said, sniffling and giving Mina a hug. Thank you. Neither of them noticed the approaching darkness. In an old classroom that Ua used for storage, Izuku discovered Najire sobbing. Even in her current state, Najire was holding back her rage powder, which is why the room was covered in what Najire had called pixie dust. Izuku was somewhat pleased with this. The sound of his friend sobbing overshadowed it, and he found it hard to remain composed when he saw her clutching herself. At first, Izuku did not approach. He only allowed Najire to sense his presence and gave her the freedom to decide whether she wanted him to console her, remain nearby, or leave. A minute later, she spread her arms wide, and Izuku stepped forward to embrace her. They stayed that way, Izuku melting into Najire's powerful grounding presence while Najire sobbed into her shoulder. Najire purred a little when he began massaging tiny circles into her back, then flushed and covered her face even more. Izuku purred back as he nuzzled her head to help her feel less self-conscious. Najire discovered that she truly enjoyed the sound, but she chose to keep that information a secret for the time being. She just wanted to enjoy this for the time being. It felt guilty to have him so close and all her own, but she would take advantage of the opportunity whenever she could. Eventually she sighed. I thought everything would be okay. I thought nothing was going to change, but they hate me now. All my classmates, the people I thought were my friends, they whisper nasty things about me when they think I can't hear them and, Najire gasped, the boys are disgusting and the girls, they're so mean. Najire began to shake, the girls say I'm ugly now. That I'm nothing, and I heard one of the boys planning to try to get me alone and take advantage of the blind girl. While his buddy joked he might help so I can't identify who did it. Najire embraced herself. I'm not scared of them trying, 'cause they're so pathetic, but, the fact they thought they even had a chance, that I was that weak, it's terrible. How long until someone with an actual chance tries? Najire looked at him. What does it say about me that I'm suddenly worried about this stuff? I am not a damsel in distress, damn it. I should be better than this. Izuku was simply holding her. I'm sorry you have to go through this. It's not fair and it's definitely not okay, but I promise, no matter what, I'll be right here. Regardless of time, place, or anything else, I will always come when you need me. Najire turned her back. Sure, until I push you away, or get annoying, or you realize how ugly I am, how weak. Izuku cut off her hand with her lips. You could never annoy me, and in my eyes, you're gorgeous. I remember seeing you before and thinking you were pretty, but now, you're so much more, and it has nothing to do with your looks, or you becoming a monster. You're beautiful because you're you. Inquisitive, thought-provoking, kind, and gentle, while never backing down on what you believe in or away when someone needs help. You're inspiring, Najire, so please don't let stupid irrelevant people get you down. Najire leaned in to give Izuku a kiss. It was abrupt, unanticipated, and flawless. As neither of them withdrew, what might have been a peck turned into something more. They actually melted into the moment as they drew closer. As Izuku cupped Najire's cheek, Najire instinctively reached for his jacket and pulled him in closer. Izuku's hellfire and Najire's pixie dust swirled and blended together throughout the room, becoming something more, like the two teenagers, perhaps something new and more potent, rather than just one or the other. In order to catch their breath, the two had to separate, but they only moved so that their heads were resting on each other's shoulders. What does this mean? Does it change anything between us? Najire asked, exhaling deeply. Izuku stroked the side of Najire's face. That's up to you. This doesn't have to mean or change anything, but before we potentially act like it never happened, I just want to say, I care about you. I can't say love yet because you deserve honesty and I'm not there yet, but, I'm sorry. I know after everything you went through this is selfish and wrong, but I promise to not keep secrets from you. Hearing what those bastards said, if you weren't so important to me, I'd be out tearing them apart for hurting you. I have issues. My life is a mess, but, if you want any part of it, of me, it's yours. If you never want to see me again, that's fine too, just as long as you're okay. Najire chuckled. Oh, gods, what am I doing? Najire lowered her head to kiss his cheek. I can't say I love you, either. I won't. This is still all so new to me, but, I know I want you. As a best friend, boyfriend, lover, I don't know, but I do know that I don't want to forget. I don't want to act like you didn't drop everything to come find me, simply because I was sad. Could we, maybe go hang out? Not training or playing with AZ, but just you and me, like a date. Izuku smiled and said, nothing would make me happier. He pulled her into another hug, which she returned, and he whispered in her ear, I know you can handle it on your own, but, I still want names. That kind of poison shouldn't be allowed in this school and, I can't help wanting to protect you. You're a diamond, Najire. You are priceless, sharp, and strong, but even you can fracture under too much strain, and I don't want to lose you. Let me help you, please. He jumped when Najire nipped his ear, saying, yes, my alpha, my feline knight, and just maybe, my king. Izuku kissed the spot where her eyes should be and gazed into her face with wet eyes, saying, anything for my queen. After 20 more minutes of cuddling, they got up and walked hand in hand to Nezu's office. They simply enjoyed each other's company, ignoring any looks they got. Nezu was horrified to learn of Najire's predicament, but he was sadly powerless to take any official action. He filed a formal complaint in the files of the worst offenders and pledged to contact the staff to be watchful, but he was powerless without evidence or something concrete. He did give Izuku a firm nod. I understand how this must make you feel, and I won't tell you to not go after any of these people, but I will remind you that being a vigilante, for any reason will cost you. No amount of short-term vengeance is worth leaving your herd without their alpha, am I clear? Najire's hand was squeezed by Izuku, who nodded. It is. The good of my herd will always come first, but should they try anything, I'll tear apart whatever Najire doesn't. As they turned to leave, Nezu grinned and said, as you should. They heard him titter, I would do the same for my mate. The teenagers blushed and fled, but their hands remained together the entire time. The remaining members of Class 1A, meanwhile, went back to class and retrieved their bags and syllabi. Toru was thrilled to be invited, but Jiro needed some persuasion when Ochako and Mina asked two of the other girls for assistance with the next part of Mina's plan. However, both eventually caved in when lunch was offered. After addressing that, they proceeded to describe the plan. Denki and Hitoshi watched as Katsuki dealt with Kirishima and his enthusiasm with the boys. Denki was eager to learn more about Izuku because the three other boys seemed to be close to him. Denki reasoned that the man must be cool if Hitoshi liked him. When everyone was prepared, they parted ways to go home or take care of their own needs. Hitoshi, who has purple hair, almost fainted with excitement when Denki invited him to come to the mall and play in the arcade or just stroll around. Denki wouldn't pass judgment, but he simply laughed at how strange his new friend was. He was peculiar in his own way. It was not surprising that the teenagers ended up at the Kiyoshi Ward Mall, which was the largest and most opulent mall for hundreds of miles. Jiro, Mina, and Toru collaborated to arrive early and choose something adorable and novel for Ochako's date. They had no intention of taking any chances. Mina and Jiro insisted on paying for the gold skirt, black leather jacket, and pink t-shirt they chose, which made their new friend appear tough and endearing. This date was going to be fantastic. Katsuki, however, changed into black gym shorts and a sleeveless black muscle shirt. Dressing up had been a major point of Kirishima's, but why should he? He had decided to make Pink Cheeks his new opponent because of her strength, and they were meeting to arrange a sparring session. Their priority was to become heroes, and that idiot failed to realize that. At first, Denki and Hitoshi were enjoying themselves. They laughed at Katsuki's ignorance, talked as they strolled, and just had a great time together. This was a novel experience for Hitoshi, and it was far superior to anything Hitomi had ever envisioned. However, Hitoshi's smile gradually faded. At first, it was minor. He saw Denki nodding off when a cute girl passed by, then he made a move on the girl behind the counter at an electronics store they went to, and finally, Denki simply ran off to strike up a conversation with some girls by the food court. Hitoshi wanted to cry when he was left alone once more. Surely this was karma. At last, he meets a cute boy who doesn't hate him right away and isn't scared of his peculiarity. Perhaps he would have been better off pretending to be Hitomi. He hadn't been attractive or especially feminine, but perhaps if he had stayed in that era, Denki wouldn't have left him. Perhaps he could have had it all if he hadn't been so self-centered and had just hung on a little while longer. He would have had to spend the rest of his life in deception, but was that really that horrible? If it meant he could have only one person who loved and desired him, would that have been such a huge deal? Denki saw his new friend appeared depressed when he got back from striking out once more. He didn't know why, but he detested it. It was awful to see a friend in such sadness, but this was worse. Was there something he had overlooked? Was Hitoshi harassed by anyone while he was making his shot? Now Denki felt like a jerk. He had intended to have fun and learn more about him, but he had somehow made a mistake. Even worse, before telling him he had to leave, Hitoshi gave him the most agonized fake smile he had ever seen. Hitoshi departed without saying anything more, but Denki was left feeling bewildered and even guilty. Why did he now feel like a jerk? He didn't understand any of this. Ochako was anxious when she first saw Katsuki by the mall entrance, but she found solace in the knowledge that the other girls were close by and prepared to assist in the event of an emergency. Ochako had grown up surrounded by a lot of muscle from her parents' construction work, but when she saw Katsuki stomp forward with unwavering confidence and his toned body on full display, it made her stomach turn over and her heart race. How come he had to be so effortlessly attractive? At first, Katsuki was a little perplexed. The jacket was cool, but the leather was stiff and constricting, and Pink Cheeks looked amazing, but that skirt would only make her look weaker in a fight. Unless she brought other clothes, it was obvious they wouldn't be fighting anytime soon, but that was okay. No big deal, they could just plan for later. Neither of the teenagers spoke when they were finally standing in front of one another. Because it was awkward, Katsuki pushed through, as he always did. Ochako didn't seem to mind when he grabbed the girl by the arm, perhaps a little roughly, and spun her so they could enter together. He wasn't one to pass judgment, but she did start hugging his arm, which was strange. Ochako was bright and vivacious at first. She made several attempts to strike up a discussion about this or that, but Katsuki didn't fall for it and only responded with brief responses of 1 or 2 words. Katsuki led her to a store that sold gym equipment, but she didn't immediately notice because her smile had faded and she was a little preoccupied. When Katsuki did speak, it was about her training regimen, and she was only pulled out of her own thoughts. She thought, okay, I can work with this. Thus, she allowed Katsuki to steer the discussion, and he raised some insightful points. Although she wasn't the biggest, Ochako had always been stronger than the other girls. With judo and perhaps a more defensive martial art, Katsuki advised her to focus on that. Making the most of her quirk would be crucial because it made her a nightmare in close combat. Ochako was taken aback by Katsuki's capacity for intelligence and analysis. Even though he was rough and aggressive, his words had meaning and exuded confidence and passion. His confidence wasn't a facade, it was genuine. He was rough because he was honest, loud because he cared. He would freely acknowledge that he was not perfect, but he would be. He was working toward becoming the best, day by day, step by step, and with every drop of blood and perspiration. Ochako was amazed. He was Katsuki, that's what he was. He was unlike anyone she had ever met, and she was motivated to keep going too. Katsuki had to acknowledge that he was hungry now that they had a proper training plan. As they left the sporting goods store and headed toward the food court, Ochako made another attempt to start a conversation, but this time she tried a different strategy in an attempt to learn more about Katsuki. Why do you want to be a hero? Like, I understand wanting to be the best like nobody ever was, but why? What drives you to never give up? She said, putting her arm around his again. After inhaling deeply, Katsuki said, Izuku. Izuku, blinked Ochako. Katsuki scowled. My big brother has always been stronger, smarter, and just so much more fucking heroic than me. Every little kid idolizes All Might. He's fucking All Might, ya know, but Izuku has always been my #1 hero. All Might can save 1,000 people. He never loses a fight, and he smiles no matter what, but that's the problem, he's not an attainable goal. He's like an act of God, and as great as I am, I'm still human. That's why Izuku is, fuck. Ochako saw Katsuki tear up but with a look of loving pride, he's just human too. When I was little, I saw him get into a fight with a group of kids twice our age to protect me, and I'm not gonna lie, he got the shit beat out of him, but even with a black eye, a busted lip, and blood all over his shirt, he never stopped getting back up. He never gave in until he drove them off. Later he admitted he'd been scared too, but that only made him that much fucking cooler, ya know. With a smile, Ochako said, yeah, I think I do. Ochako then listened to Katsuki tell her about the night Izuku vanished and some of the things he had discovered since. She was amazed. Although she had found the older Bakugo cool and even a little cute, Katsuki's adoration for him was evident. So what about you? What drives you to become a hero? He smirked as they finally sat down to eat. Katsuki had insisted that she eat her fill, price be damned. With a flush, Ochako turned away and said, it'll sound dumb to you. Katsuki laughed. Probably, but it's not my drive. It's not my goal. It can be dumb to me, but as long as it drives you it will never be actually dumb. It's important to you. Now out with it. Katsuki tilted his head in perplexity but remained silent as Ochako sighed, money. I want the money. My parents have a construction business, but since you can't get licenses for quirk use without a hero diploma they have a hard time competing. Look at Smentos. Why would you pay my parents to build something in a week when he can do it in a day at 1/10 the cost? We never had a lot of money growing up. I got bullied a lot for never having anything new, but they did their best. They always made sure I knew they loved me, and they tried their best to give me everything they could, even if they had to occasionally skip meals to do it. Katsuki surprised Ochako by reaching over and wiping away her tears. Katsuki exhaled. So you don't want to be a burden on them. I guess I can see that. And with the degree you can help them cut costs. Ochako replied, kinda. I want to return all the love they gave me tenfold. I want to make enough to let them go on vacation for the first time in years. I want them to never go hungry again. I I want to be the daughter they deserve and give them all the things they had to sacrifice to take care of me. Katsuki exhaled. You're right, that is dumb. Ochako was distraught but wasn't finished. Do you honestly think any of that matters to them? Like sure, it's nice, but none of that shit was the point. Meeting you, I can tell why they did it though. Cheeks, you don't need to become the daughter they deserve because you fucking already are. Have you looked at the statistics on a hero's life expectancy? A lot of them die young, but despite that, you're still willing to risk it all just to cut them a break. That's pretty fucking heroic. Clearly they just want to see you happy or they never would have worked so hard, am I right? They love you, and I'm sure if you asked they'd tell you the same thing. You don't owe them anything, but the fact you want to reward them while helping others shows nothing they did went to waste. Ochako shuddered and unconsciously kissed him, but Katsuki pulled away with a startled and perplexed expression, as if he had been burned. When Ochako saw that, she simply fled, sobbing, before he could react, and the other girls came a moment later. Katsuki was stunned. He had no idea what was happening. Why would she? Katsuki's head clenched and his eyes widened as he yelled, "Fuck!" in exasperation. Hitoshi entered the teacher's dorm while Najire and Izuku were eating dinner. He took a blanket from the couch and wrapped it around himself to hide inside. Upon noticing this, the two older teenagers exchanged a glance before taking seats on either side of him. Izuku exhaled. Do you want to talk, Hito? I can feel you suppressing our link, so all I'm getting is confusion. If there's something bothering you, I want to help. The younger teen threw himself into her embrace as Najire interrupted, saying, we want to help. I know we don't have a fancy link like you have with Izuku, but she did sense something. Even though it was extremely weak, it smelled like anguish and was like a scent on the wind. Najire immediately embraced Hitoshi and allowed him to cry. I don't know why, but whatever god is out there wants to see me suffer, Hitoshi sniffled after a while. Izuku gasped, Hito, I need you to back it up a bit and explain slowly. Still covered in a warm blanket, Hitoshi began, first I'm born into the wrong body, then I develop a villainous quirk. My parents died, I got beat up all the time for being a villain or ugly or just because someone felt like it. When I became a monster, I thought it would solve everything. He sighed, I thought now that I was in the right body, and I had you, Izuni, that I could finally be happy, but it was just the setup for the universe's next cruel joke. I finally thought I made a friend. Someone who would accept me no matter what, but I don't think that's true anymore. Oh sweetie, what happened? Najire said, giving Hitoshi another embrace. Moaned, we went to the mall, and it was nice. We were talking, laughing, Okami his laugh is so cute, and I think I might really like him. Figures that the only part of me that is still a girl is finding boys cute. Hitoshi continued to shrink, but then I noticed he kept getting distracted by girls. I don't know what I expected, but why did he have to be straight? Why couldn't I just suffer a little longer in the wrong body? If I had, maybe he'd look at me like he does them. Would it have really been so bad to live a lie, if I got to spend that life being loved? After exchanging stern looks, Najire tightened his grip on Hitoshi and restrained his arms, causing him to struggle feebly. Izuku reached out and revealed Hitoshi's puffy, Hito, you can't mean that. Of course it would have been bad. Any relationship built on a lie isn't a real relationship. Even if he returned your feelings in that situation, he wouldn't love you, he'd love the lie you told him, and that wouldn't be fair to either of you. I'm sorry I didn't realize you were harboring these doubts, or I would have addressed them sooner. I know you went through a lot, but I meant it when I promised to help you any way I can. Najire stroked the side of Hitoshi's head, we love you and accept you no matter who you are. You will always be our Hito, regardless of if you choose MI or she, but you need to stop letting other people define you, even us. You have a right to be comfortable in your own skin, and to love yourself as much as anyone else does. You are your own monster, and you are beautiful. After that, the three teenagers simply gave each other hugs. Thank you Neji-ne. Maybe if I had been half as pretty as you, this wouldn't be so hard, Hitoshi finally said, giving Najire the puppy dog eye. Izuku simply grinned and snorted, saying, sorry Hito, there's no such thing as half perfect. You're either Najire or not. Najire was blushing. Okay, none of that now you two. Is there anything else we can help you with, Hito? I didn't really eat lunch, and I haven't eaten since breakfast, Hitoshi said, blushing as his stomach growled. All right, go ahead and finish mine. I'll just make myself more later, Izuku said, rolling his eyes. Be careful now, love. If you keep acting like a dad you might give me ideas. Nejire laughed as Hitoshi hurried Izuku's plate as if it were his last meal. Izuku turned to face Nejire and said, don't get me wrong, that sounds like a dream, if it's something you want to, but this is still new and we still have a lot of things to figure out. At the same time, if you think I'd settle for anyone but you, you're nuts. I finally found someone who's crazy like I'm crazy, and I have no intention of letting that go. Izuku purred in a mixture of arousal and sadness. Nejire jerked her head forward and kissed him on the lips, saying, promises, promises. She then moved aside and joined Hitoshi at the table. If she swayed slightly for Izuku's pleasure, that was her prerogative. In the meantime, Ochako and her friends ran the entire distance to her apartment. They might have lost the gravity girl if it weren't for Toru because Jiro wasn't in such good shape and Mina couldn't use her acid outside of training. Ochako was able to sneak into her apartment before her friends could catch up despite this. They had a few problems as a result, chief among them being that if Ochako didn't unlock the door, they would only have one way in, and none of them wanted to damage it in that way. Ochako cried for 15 minutes, and then Toru sighed, okay, I'll get the door open, but we never talk about this again. It didn't happen and no questions. The other two shrugged, curious, and to their surprise, Toru undressed. After 5 minutes, the door opened, and Toru silently returned her clothes. Given what she said and the way her shoulders were positioned after she put her shirt back on, they could tell she didn't want to discuss what she had done. Taking one problem at a time, they headed toward Ochako's room, which was more akin to the apartment's largest closet. The girls spent the remainder of the evening consoling Ochako and bonding over past romantic failures. Years ago, Mina acknowledged that she had a crush on Kirishima, but it had faded as they grew older, though it never went away entirely. Kyoka averted her gaze while telling them about a girl she had attempted to approach, only to have it rejected with a disgusted expression. When Toru's turn came, she simply shrugged and said, I've never tried. I'm not beautiful like the rest of you, so nobody would ever want me. Sorry girls. This had the opposite effect of what she had anticipated because all of her friends insisted that she was also attractive and that she would eventually find someone who would accept her for who she was. That night, they had a little unplanned sleepover and made a commitment to always support one another. For their first official day of classes, the girls dressed in the morning and headed to class together. Ochako's new acquaintances made several attempts to persuade her to leave the armpit she was in. They would assist her in finding another place to live, but they were all concerned that if she continued to live there, she might become ill or injured. Izuku was in the staff room talking about their future strategy. I'll stick with 1A for now. I'm sorry Ken, but keeping all of the monsters we already knew about in a single class was just safer. I intend to get at least Hitoshi to the point he can be my eyes on the others this semester, and then next semester I'll shadow your class. I don't expect any triggers to come up for them now that they're in UA, but Nejire is a golden example that we should stay vigilant. Should the situation change, I'll start bouncing between classes, but I'm concerned it could slow down the training process. Until at least one of them can control both of their forms, I just don't feel comfortable leaving them unattended. If your class starts feeling snubbed or like 1A is getting preferential treatment, I'm sure Nejire would be happy to come and help train a few times. That should help. After all, she's a lot prettier than me. I can't disagree. It's aggravating to see you limit yourself to only half the heroic first years, but I see your point. We'll make it work. What were your thoughts on their first heroics class, by the way? Vlad sighed as several teachers rolled their eyes but couldn't help smiling. Izuku was about to respond when Toshinori, in his skeletal form, smiled and said, I thought we could use it for a bit of multitasking. Izuku turned to face him and narrowed his eyes, waiting for an explanation. Toshinori's sweat dropped but stammered, so, I understand that the original plan was to give them a taste of hero training in a hero versus villain challenge, but I thought young Bakugo could get involved as well. Maybe as a reward for the winning teams they can each pick a member to have a final round, 5v1 against you. That way they can see what they have to work on and get an idea for how experience plays into it. The room was quiet before Aizawa breathed that was not the plan for today. That was supposed to be next week after we had a few quirkless sparring classes and performed a live test of both their costumes and support gear. Did you even look at the old lesson plan? Blushed Toshinori. Of course I did. I just thought seeing where they were starting from would help with determining who needs help and which students could help them during cooperative spars. Also, this is a live test of both costume and tech. We all know that something might feel fine until you're in the thick of it, or a piece of gear is what we want until it doesn't function as we thought. You yourself said that they don't have time to play about. We only have so much time to help these teens become outstanding heroes, so we need to work efficiently. Aizawa frowned but remained silent. Izuku raised his arms in protest. On the record, I don't like this. I'm all for efficiency, but this is too much too fast. Izuku let out a deep breath. I am unfortunately only an assistant though. If this is how you want to run this, I'll do my best to make sure nobody gets hurt irreparably, and I'll play my part, but if this goes wrong, it's on you. With every teacher here as my witness, I'm adamantly against this. Nezu turned to the space-themed hero and asked, is everything prepared, Anon-chan? The upgrades to your facility have all been tested. Toshinori nodded, appearing a little uneasy. Nezu clapped his paws and said, noted. Now, Vlad, I believe your students are heading to the USJ for rescue training with 13. Vlad nodded. 13 looked at him through her helmet. Of course, Sensei. We are running at peak efficiency and our new defenses are beyond my wildest dreams. Nothing gets in, and nothing gets out. The main doors are even rated to handle 3 full power smashes, so I'm confident we are secure. I think we need to move this along for today. Classes are going to start soon and we need to be prepared. The students aren't the only ones expected to go plus ultra, am I right? Izuku sighed and drank some soda because he didn't like Nezu's dirty leaf water or Aizawa's bean soup in the morning. A few people smiled as a result, and the teachers completed everything else they needed to do for the week. Several teachers smiled or gave him high fives as they parted ways and headed to their respective classes. Nimari, who had the greatest stake in it, attached an alternative leash to Izuku's collar. Izuku felt uneasy about the gleam in her eyes, and this one was thicker and made of black leather. She whispered, not this time, Tomcat. This little number is one of mine. She licked her lips and said, and I don't have the key. Guess you'll have to be a good boy and beg your mistress for it later. She blew him a little kiss and slipped away with a giggle, leaving Izuku feeling a lot of mixed emotions, mostly embarrassment, anger, and intrigue. Even before they got to the door, Izuku sensed it. This class didn't have to be a part of his herd, even though they weren't. It was only confirmed by stepping in. These children expressed hurt, bewilderment, and rage, and not in the usual, teenage rebellion, manner. He thought Hitoshi would be a little strange, but why were half the girls staring at his brother? Then there was the awkwardness between Kaminari and Hitoshi, which prevented him from making any physical contact unless one or both of them requested it. The bell rang, and Aizawa complained, had a long patrol. Bakugo-san's in charge. A yellow sleeping bag appeared to swell around him as he slunk to sleep beneath the desk. Izuku stroked the bridge of his nose. Good morning. We'll open up with a rundown of what to expect today, since it's your first real day of class. I will be around throughout the day to answer questions and give support during each of your classes, and after lunch you will have your first heroics class. I will join you for that as well, but your instructor has informed me he intends to take full advantage of my presence. Because of that, I will suggest you don't eat too heavy and stick to blander food. Anything can happen when you're on patrol, and it's a lot easier to throw up vanilla ice cream than buffalo wings, take that from me. A few felt queasy at the picture, but they moved on because it was wise counsel if the training would be hands-on. After some time, Izuku sat down at the desk and simply began responding to the class's questions. The conversation was quite informal. Izuku snorted and tapped a spot on the wall in response to a question about whether the principal actually had hidden tunnels throughout the school. Nezu waved as a small door opened, then it closed as if it had never been there and had no visible seam. When homeroom finally ended, Aizawa got up and walked away, only to be replaced by a smirking Nimari. To their disbelief, the hero cracked her whip. Izuku appeared to stiffen. Now, boys and girls, I'm here to teach you about your history and its impact on how it has molded our culture. Whether it be the Great Sahara War, where a number of African warlords came together to try to topple their government early during the rise of Quirks, or the differences between the American and Japanese hero systems, it will be covered in this class. Midnight tugged on Izuku's leash to make him, in this, we have a boon. You see, this pussycat has spent time overseas and can give us a first-hand look at some of the places he's been. With a sigh, Izuku said, don't expect much. I mostly stuck to the more wild areas, but Raikot, Nepal, Jinchang, and Surinda were all places I traveled through at different points. Can we get on with the lesson now, Midnight? A few students, including Katsuki, appeared surprised. A pouting Midnight said, not until you ask properly, pet, with a tilt of her head. Izuku said, blushing and averting his gaze, you can't be serious. Not in front of the students. I insist, my pet. These children need to know who is in charge here. Now say it. Midnight winked at the class. Please mistress, may we begin? Izuku growled. Of course, dear, and don't worry, I won't tell your mate about us, Midnight said, biting her lip as several girls blushed. With a deadly glare, Izuku turned his head and said, you're pushing your luck, Kayama. Tease me if you must, but keep her out of this. After recoiling, Midnight nodded and said, I'm sorry, Bakugo-kun, that was too far. After inhaling and calming down, Izuku said, yes, it was, but that doesn't make me getting angry appropriate. I'm sorry too. The actual lesson then began with the emergence of quirks and the immediate aftermath, with an emphasis on early governmental reactions and documented vigilantes and notable villains. Here, Izuku demonstrated his in-depth understanding of the histories of various early heroes and the lessons that could be drawn from their actions, both good and bad. It turned into a game in which Midnight would introduce a subject, then figuratively toss the microphone to Izuku for a longer explanation, only to toss it back for the next point. Together, they shared moments of triumph and tragedy as well as an epic story of common people standing up to protect their neighbors during a period of escalating unrest. When Present Mike took over for Midnight, the students were motivated. Before continuing where Midnight left off, he gave an overview of his English class's structure and used speeches by early American and English-speaking heroes to let the students hear the confidence and passion in their voices as well as how the language was intended to be spoken. Izuku was available to explain new words and phrases in a way that was easier for the students to understand when they were confused. Izuku used real-world examples in ectoplasm's math class to keep the students engaged and demonstrate the applications of challenging equations. Izuku ensured that everyone understood the significance of the material they were learning, whether it was about potential weight dispersal of rubble, wind speed for firearms and grapple lines, or accurately reporting the dimensions of a space during a rescue. This earned the instructor a grateful smile. Even the less attentive members of 1A sat up a little and paid closer attention as a result. Izuku managed to keep the students interested even in Smentas's class, which is typically characterized by a lack of enthusiasm and a sense of stagnation as the hero discussed literature and its significance. Giving passionate soliloquies in poetic pentameter made Izuku feel a little uncomfortable, but he made sure to keep the class engaged and eager for more. When the students took an active interest in talking about the subtleties of character interactions or an author's intentions, Cementos appeared a little surprised, but he also grinned because he found the experience enjoyable. Cementos whispered something in Izuku's ear as they were finishing up for lunch, and the young man quickly left, grinning, leaving some people perplexed. Cementos was just chuckling. I got messages from Nimari and Snipe requesting his attention. Don't worry, he's just excited to be able to spend time with some important people. Katsuki laughed. Important people? Who the fuck is more important than his brother? Katsuki simply froze at that information, wondering what else he hadn't been told. Cementos shrugged and said, probably his girlfriend and the little girl they look after. He seemed to be forced to admit how little he knew about his older brother each time he turned around. He was getting annoyed by it. Izuku headed to the support theater with a smile on his face. Usually, he would inquire about meeting there, but he was so eager to see Najire that having lunch with her and AZ was a welcome relief from his fatigue. Having fun, he asked with a smile as he entered and saw two of his favorite girls giggling and whispering to one another. The two girls straightened and grinned mischievously at each other. AZ hurried over and took his hand before anything more could happen, saying, we have a surprise for you, Izuni. Neji-ne and I worked really hard on it, so we hope you enjoy. Najire took Izuku's other hand as they approached, and the two of them guided him to a locked cabinet. When they entered a security code together, the lock opened to reveal what was inside. With its green, black, and gold color scheme, black cape, and oni mask, it resembled samurai armor. Izuku instinctively reached out and placed his hand on the chest plate, feeling the power pulsing through it. It appeared as though the armor had a heartbeat of its own, but it beat in time with his own. His senses did not perceive this as armor. Rather, it seemed to be a part of him. How? What is this? Izuku blinked as he swallowed hard. Najire could feel the bewilderment and fear radiating from him, and both girls' smiles dimmed at the less than ecstatic response they were receiving. Najire took a moment to reflect. I noticed that you shed a bit and AZ helped me collect up every scrap of material left from our fight. It wasn't much, but we made it work. I figured, some heroes have DNA costumes to help with transformations, and I thought this might work in a similar way for you. We wanted to show you how important you are to us. We wanted to help you become the hero you were meant to be. Did we do something bad? Do you not like it? AZ asked, breaking down in tears as she sensed the tension in the room. Hunters like Yuri Musha hunt monsters, but worse. They take trophies. They carve up their kills and make weapons and armors of us. They use us to hurt our friends and loved ones. It's horrible. That's why I got scared. The practice might be rare these days, but that armor looks like what would most likely be made of me if they killed me. Izuku quickly turned around and embraced both of them. Both girls gave him a horrified look before turning to stare at the suit, which appeared to be staring back at them with a haunting expression. AZ sniffled, we didn't know. I'm so sorry Aniki. We didn't mean to, as they shuddered. Izuku pleasantly surprised them by chuckling and embracing them. Don't be. I'm not mad. I just wanted you to understand the significance of me wearing that armor, and I fully intend to. They both stared at him with disbelief, but you have turned one of the most brutal horrifying parts of our history into something beautiful and full of love. I felt it when I touched the armor. It's me, and I am it. I have no doubt that it will do everything you intended and more. Thank you. Thank you for giving me something I didn't know I needed. They tried the armor on, put it away, and had a good lunch while Izuku told Nejire about his morning and AZ told her favorite people about her first day of Nezu's instruction. All three of them agreed that it was ideal because it was loving and caring for one another. Nejire had to leave for class when Nimari eventually stopped by to pick up AZ, but not before they each gave him a final embrace and Nejire planted a gentle kiss on him. To the surprise of the 1A students, Aizawa was by herself when they returned from lunch. With a sigh, the weary man said, "Your heroics instructor will be here soon, and Malice will meet up with you a bit later." With a loud cry, "Have no fear, for I am here," coming into the room like a normal person. All Might stormed through the door before the students could do anything more than begin whispering and exchanging worried glances. "Normal person my ass," Aizawa growled as the students cheered, and after everyone had calmed down, he turned to All Might and said, "Don't screw this up. Malice will meet you at the training site once he's properly attired. I'm trusting you to not be you for the next couple hours. Do not disappoint me." With that, Aizawa strode out with nearly silent steps, leaving All Might perplexed. All Might resumed his boisterous demeanor, "Welcome to Hero Basic Training. You can consider this express pass into the world of heroics, but before we get down to training, you all have to look the part. UA has taken your initial designs and brought them to life. A door opened to reveal numbered cases. Grab the case matching your seat number, and get changed. I'll be waiting at City C for all of you, so let's all go plus ultra." All Might ran off as the class cheered and they stood up to get their costumes. There was an intense level of excitement in the room, and everyone was eager to show off what they had planned. Fewer people realized what Aizawa had said about Izuku, and even fewer remembered it, but those who did were even more excited about what lay ahead. After a little while, Hitoshi was in a stall, checking himself one last time before leaving and grinning slightly as he looked in the mirror. Beginning at the bottom, his reinforced jumpsuit's pant legs were tucked into black all-terrain boots. Gold guards were placed at his elbows and knees to offer protection and support. He wore a lightweight tactical vest over the chest of his jumpsuit, which would increase his defenses in the event that a knife or punch got past him without impairing his movement. A mantle the same color as his wings encircled his neck, shielding his throat and helping to conceal his mouth. He grinned as he folded his wings over himself, revealing his costume, which allowed him to blend in with the crowd if he wanted to. Unbeknownst to him, Denki marveled at his friend's appearance and blushed slightly. As Ochako blushed in the mirror, Mina approached her from behind and purred, "You look amazing, Chako. This will definitely make that Bomberanian regret turning you down." "Sure, if you say so, Mina. Why did they replace my boots with heels? Ugh, these are so uncomfortable." Ochako grinned at her friend while sighing. In the meantime, Ochako wanted to yell that he hadn't truly rejected her. He hadn't kissed her back right away, and she'd just gotten scared and fled. Mina laughed. "Yeah, that's kinda weird. Don't worry though, if it doesn't work for you I'm sure Baku-sensei can talk to support for you and get it changed back. Also, don't look so down. You're incredible, You're powerful, and most of all you're you, so let's go out there and show everyone how amazing we are." With a smile, Ochako hugged her pink friend and said, "I don't know if I could do this without you." The pupils showed up one by one and got ready for their first heroics lesson. All Might stood by themselves to greet them, and they walked with a little more assurance because, as of right now, they were heroes. They didn't realize someone was missing until the final few entered the area. At that moment, they heard a roar, saw two blazing eyes in the tunnel's darkness, and heard the heavy footsteps of an approaching armored figure. They saw a figure that radiated power as hellfire flowed off of them in wisps when it stepped into the light, and then it reared back its head and changed. The figure grew until the true beastly might of Malice roared into the midday sun, fusing flesh and armor. "Welcome, heroes. You stand before the kings of day and dusk. Now show us what you've got and let me hear it," it said, glancing around the classroom before shrinking back into the armored figure and bursting into laughter. "Plus ultra," was yelled by the class, raising a fist. "Now that's what I want to hear," laughed the armored figure. "So they finally let you off your leash. Congratulations, Aniki," scoffed Katsuki. Malice nodded. "Not quite. Nezu had Powerloader upgrade my collar so it can be deactivated at a range. I can already feel it reactivated now that the test is complete." "This is amazing work, young Malice. It looks, what is this made of?" All Might said as he moved forward and put his hand on Malice's shoulder. Izuku took off his mask and said, "Me. Two very intelligent people figured that they could use discarded bits of my monster form to build me armor, like a DNA costume, but this is so much more. Monster pieces carry a bit of us with them, so, this armor is as much a part of me as it ever was. It doesn't limit me in any way and might as well be weightless while I wear it. In short, all the benefits of heavy armor, with none of the drawbacks." Izuku did a backflip and chuckled, "Not to mention, as you saw, it shifts with me, meaning I don't need to worry about destroying it in a pinch." He laughed, "And you wear it well." Turning to the pupils, All Might extended his hands, "You all look amazing, so on to the lesson. We are going to run mock battles between heroes and villains. Villains, you will be guarding a fake bomb, perfect for practicing missions where you will be expected to protect a high-value target such as a foreign dignitary. Protect your objective, run out the clock, or capture your opponents. Hero team, your mission is straightforward. Touch the bomb or capture the villains with this capture tape. Villains, you get a 5-minute head start to set up a defense, and then I'll start the timer for 10 minutes. If everybody's ready, I'll draw for teams." After taking out 2 boxes, All Might began extracting names from one of them. After everyone had been organized, All Might laughed. "As an incentive to do your best, not only will the winning teams earn bragging rights, but one member of each team will get the opportunity to join in for one final match. 5 of you versus Malice in a no-holds-bar finale." Izuku gave them all a hungry look while crossing his arms and letting the hellfire cascade off him like smoke. "Don't worry, kiddos, I'll be gentle." A few students trembled, but more than anticipated gave him a predatory glance in return, which only made him smile more. Izuku moved to the other box and began removing balls to find matches. The first matchup was Ochako and Ashido versus Kirishima and Bakugo. Izuku saw that Ochako had a big smile and appeared ready to go on a rampage, while his brother appeared somewhat conflicted. While Izuku was supposed to lead the others to the observation room, All Might led the boys toward the building they would be using. Izuku wanted to know what was going on. Kirishima was examining the bomb and room a few minutes later when he heard an explosion and witnessed Katsuki shoot himself in the face. Katsuki's hands kept popping, and once the smoke cleared, he was able to concentrate as usual. The brunette let out a growl. "I'm going on offense. With my explosions it's better if I fight alone, less collateral, and I can be more liberal with my spread. I'm trusting you to defend just in case they slip by. I don't expect them to, but a redundancy is a solid plan." "Can do, Bakubro." Kirishima nodded, and both boys positioned themselves ready as All Might announced the start of the round over the speakers. Just before a big piece of floor slammed down into his back from the ceiling, Katsuki heard the words, "Release," and sped around like a hunting shark, searching for the other team. Smirking at the trap, Katsuki turned to face the chunk of wood and plaster and then blasted it away. He didn't anticipate Mina riding it down and spraying him with low-concentration acid, which burned away at his costume and momentarily blinded him. As shrapnel rained down on him and a knee struck his stomach, Katsuki landed back first on the ground below. Mina boxed his ears before he could recover from the wind knocking him out. Katsuki simply began to smile rather than give up or become angry. He had been searching for this. Pebbles that slowed him down and mountains he would have to climb, not cowardly extras who would bow or bend. He was unable to breathe, see, or hear, but he was still able to fight. Katsuki exploded from his left palm straight onto the ground before Mina could cover him with capture tape, causing his body to turn and shoulder check Mina away. Katsuki bought himself some time to recover by forcing distance between himself and the pink girl by rolling with the momentum. Mina made an attempt to follow, but it was too late. His sight returned first, and he examined the space. He inhaled deeply before launching his counteroffensive. Unlike his opponents, they didn't slow him down because he was accustomed to the sound of his own explosions and the smoke they could produce. He was able to turn around Mina and pin her down until she submitted after a few weak, widespread blasts. All Might called her capture out after a tape ring. Katsuki scoffed, looked around, and began to sprint for the bomb. At one point, Ochako slipped away, and he didn't think Kirishima could defeat her. Katsuki realized he was correct as soon as he walked into the room. At the moment, Ochako and Kirishima were fighting to pin one another to the ceiling. However, Ochako frowned and let go of her quirk upon hearing him enter, surprising Kirishima. She was able to seize the hardened boy's wrist as they fell, throwing him straight into Katsuki, who was forced to catch him. Katsuki's explosive dash was quicker than Ochako's, but Ochako managed to catch herself before rolling back onto her feet and running for the bomb. Now, Kirishima was behind her, and he was right in her path. Ochako obviously didn't share the boy's desire to harm her. Before Katsuki caught her by the wrists and sighed, "Surrender, cheeks. You can't beat both of us, and I don't want to hurt you." She charged at him and delivered a series of awkward blows that he easily sidestepped. Too late for that, Ochako began to thrash and cry, but she was unable to escape, and he had far more fighting experience than she did. Kirishima quickly pinned her and wrapped her wrist. Uraraka captured. Villains win. Return to the observation room so we can discuss your performance. All Might yelled. Uraraka captured. Villains win. Ochako stomped off as soon as she was set free, her eyes wet as she searched for and set free her friend and teammate. In the viewing area, All Might requested an MVP, but Malice did not respond. This was a solid fight. Uraraka came up with an impressive plan, and Ashido nearly used it to succeed. Katsuki proved too adaptive to beat, but that says more about him than the plan. If it had been Kirishima instead, I believe the results would have been very different, and we would be looking at a hero victory. Not that you are any less capable, Kirishima, but it's clear you focus on a more rigid fighting style, and in this case it likely was the reason you didn't shine as brightly. I'll make it a point to work with you in the future to add more pivots to your unbreakable defense, but you did well. I don't believe this round had an MVP, because both young ladies really gave it their all and the boys reciprocated as best they could. The All Might deliberated. I agree. In a real fight the ladies' plan would require an unacceptable amount of public destruction, but what can be deemed acceptable after a good capture can be argued a bit more easily. Well done. Now, on to the next round. Shoji and Kota, you may enter the building. Jiro and Todoroki, you're on deck. In the end, this round was extremely quick. It came down to Todoroki and Kota because Jiro and Shoji both tried a similar tactic. Unfortunately, Todoroki's icy powers swiftly drove away the few animals Kota could distract or attack, and with Jiro providing him with information about their opponents' whereabouts, Kota and Shoji soon found themselves trapped in ice, unable to move. The heroes won without even going inside the building when All Might quickly checked them and declared them captured. Shinzo and Sato faced Zero and Denki next. In order to allow Denki to run his electricity through Zero's tape, they came up with the idea to crisscross its lines. They were unprepared for a sugar-crazed Sato to charge through while wearing Hitoshi as a backpack, covering himself with his wings, and absorbing the electricity with a pair of whip-like appendages. Hitoshi never looked at Denki during the entire process, but in the end, neither villain had the strength or capacity to stop the Sato Express, and the three of them had to cooperate to safely bring the Sugar Hulk down. Tokiyami and Asui faced off against Ida and Ojiro in the following round. Ida was on a mission, but Tokiyami and Su planned to use Su's superior mobility and the pure strength of Dark Shadow in a nearly dark room to bog them down until they were forced to stop. Ida hurried inside the building, completely ignoring Ojiro. Fumikage and Su had no chance. Ida was standing by the bomb in less than 3 minutes, staring into the camera as if it were a slight to his mother. The last round before the inevitable slaughter pitted Momo and Toru against Mineta and Aoyama. Who was going to be killed depended on who you asked, but the final match was utterly uninteresting. Momo set off the traps she set along their route, while Toru managed reconnaissance covertly. Aoyama received a lot of sympathy, but Mineta showed remarkable fortitude. He was still dragging himself forward with a lecherous expression after being hit by 3 foam grenades, 2 pepper spray cans, and a real cannon. He might not have stopped if Toru hadn't pinned him underfoot. The worst part was that when Mineta realized how close he was to, quote, a completely naked hottie, he seemed perfectly fine with the situation. "I'm proud of every single one of you," Izuku said, surveying the entire class after everyone had returned. "But for 5 of you, I can only hope you don't take your loss too hard." He stood a little straighter and let Hellfire envelop and give his mask an eerie presence. "You tried your best, and starting tomorrow I'm going to help each of you to take that drive to the next level." With that menacing message in hand, Malice backed out of the room, letting an arm blade lightly run along one of the walls, making a blood-chilling sound. With a resigned sigh, Sato said, "Throwing me to the wolves then, Hitoshi." All Might turned to his students, and before he could even ask, a few stepped back, indicating they had no interest in participating. Katsuki and Hitoshi were the most prominent among them. "He's more of a tiger, technically, but hell yes," shrugged Hitoshi. "Before I voluntarily entered the ring with Malice, I would fight Aizawa-sensei. I'm sorry, but no amount of motivational speeches could change my mind." Nodding, Katsuki said, "Damn straight. Even though I know I'm not ready yet, I wouldn't give up if I felt I had a chance. I'll give him the battle of his life someday, but not right now." The round began not with the buzzer and announcement from All Might as in previous rounds, but with Malice's throaty roar of challenge that sent a shiver down everyone's spine. Ultimately, it was Ida, Hiroshima, Sato, Todoroki, and Momo entering the Tiger Den with a mix of well wishes and playful taunts about what kind of flowers they wanted for their funerals. Hiroshima, Sato, and Momo came together to make a plan, while Todoroki and Ida split off to make their own individual plans. The others watched as Malice looked at them all and purposefully closed the door as if it were nothing. Ida tried to rush forward to a quick victory, as before, but was caught by an armored and clawed hand that caught him by his helmeted face and slammed him into the ground. The next thing Ida knew, he was flying back out the door, a ring of capture tape around his arm and ringing in his ears. The others, with the exception of Ida, who appeared to be slightly concussed, watched as Todoroki scowled and took the next step. With a stomp of his right foot, a glacier of ice began to extend and grow before attempting to encompass the entire building. Before he could do so, wisps of hellfire began to leak from every open crack and window of the building, giving the impression that it was completely immolated, but there was no visible damage. When ice met fire, the ice was pushed back, and when Sato and Kirishima held fast to a shield that Momo had barely had time to make, when the ice was almost completely evaporated, causing Todoroki's right side. The area between them and the building was a graveyard of half and completely evaporated ice. They had 2 teammates down and in need of medical attention, and they all agreed that they couldn't fight or sneak past Malice, even if they worked together, and that any attempts they might make would only result in more of them needing to see Recovery Girl. With a heavy heart, all 3 heroes in training sent a message to All Might that they were surrendering after that display, and hearing All Might officially declare Todoroki out of the round. After a few minutes, everyone was awakened back in the observation room, with the exception of Malice. The majority of the class was praising Kirishima, Sato, and Momo for at least not getting hurt, while the others were staring at Todoroki and Ida, who were furious and would not acknowledge that they had made a mistake. Izuku entered the room with his helmet off, grinning broadly, and said, "Congratulations, Kirishima, Sato, and Yaoyorozu on passing my test." "BB, but we lost sensei." Momo stumbled as the rest of the class blinked. "Without really trying, we gave up." Izuku grinned and said, "Exactly. In contrast to those 2, you realized you couldn't handle the situation and didn't move forward. In a real-life scenario, you would call for assistance and carry out your plan, but you chose to not participate, which is the hardest thing a hero can do." Izuku frowned and said, "This is non-negotiable. If you had tried to fight me, you would have lost in the end." Ida attempted to interrupt. "Anyone here who believes that it would be a good idea to challenge All Might to an arm wrestling match is foolish, and anyone attempting to engage in direct combat with me is just as foolish. At this point, you lack the necessary tools and experience. Not that avoiding interaction is always the best course of action. Sometimes there isn't any other choice, but it's unacceptable to blindly put yourself in a situation you can't handle. We will review later when it is appropriate, but for now, the majority of you performed admirably. I agree, All Might said with a nod. In light of that, you are all fired. Get out of your uniforms and take a nap. Another day and another chance to go plus ultra as tomorrow. The majority of the students didn't mind that All Might was gone in an instant, leaving Izuku to handle the actual dismissal procedure. Although their first day had been a mess of expectations, most weren't let down.
So this was it for the series. I hope you enjoyed it. To watch more series like this, subscribe to my channel. Till then, bye bye.